Chapter 902. More and more outsiders poured into Xiangyang district. The already bustling city became livelier. After the new year, the weather became brighter and warmer. At the ends of the streets, one could see travel-worn scholars everywhere. Similar discussions could be heard everywhere in the taverns, tea houses, and eateries. I heard that the Lin Pavilion will open tomorrow? That's what the notice outside the district headquarters said. I wonder what the interior of the Lin Pavilion looks like? Is it the same inside and out, or is it just a facade? The magistrate of Liuzhou built Wanzhou so well. She wouldn't simply boast, would she? Let's go take a look when the pavilion opens tomorrow. Some people talked about the Lin Pavilion, some talked about the current situation in the world, and some talked about Jiang Pingji. She governed Wanzhou until it was prosperous and no one could blame her. However, the things she had done all these years were both praised and criticized by the outside world. There were only 2 points that were mentioned most often: supporting the poor and harboring disloyalty. Needless to say, among the civil and military officials under her, apart from Feng Jin, who else was from a respectable and noble family? As for harboring disloyalty, it was enough to explain everything just by looking at the recruitment notice and the construction of the Lin Pavilion. Under everyone's anticipation, the Lin Pavilion officially opened on the 3rd of March, the Flower Festival. From its appearance, the Lin Pavilion was no different from ordinary mansions. It inherited the consistent architectural style of Xiangyang district, simple and elegant. There were soldiers standing guard everywhere outside. Each of them had a cold glint in their eyes and a resolute look on their faces. They stood there motionlessly. Yuan Jing, Feng Ren, and Cheng Cheng presided over the opening ceremony. After offering sacrifices to the gods, they personally pulled down the red silk covering the signboard. On the signboard, there were 3 big characters: Golden Scale Pavilion. The 3 characters were vigorous and powerful, with a hint of nobility. The scholars waiting outside were blocked by the soldiers with their bodies. The whole place was silent. Countless pairs of eyes stared at the hands of Yuan Jing and the others. After the ceremony, the pavilion opens. Cheng Cheng and the others wore high hats and wide belts. Their sleeves fluttered and their expressions were solemn. With a squeak, the door of the Lin Pavilion opened. At that moment, several rows of soldiers passed through the crowd and arranged for the scholars to enter in an orderly manner. "Why can he enter but I can't?" The soldier in charge of inspection said, "You can't enter today without a token." "Token? What token?" The scholar who was stopped frowned fiercely. It seemed that he would not give up until he made it clear. The soldier said, "A few days ago, the district headquarters put up a notice. Anyone who wants to enter the Golden Scale Pavilion has to register and take an examination first. Only after passing can they get a token." Nowadays, paper was still very expensive, and books were even more difficult to find. It was hard to guarantee that he wouldn't run into a book thief with bad character. Su Ku and the others slightly adjusted the threshold to enter the Golden Scale Pavilion. The assessment of literary talent was secondary. The most important thing was to take the opportunity to register the other party's information and put invisible shackles on them. You dare to cause trouble? Every wrong has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. I can always find you by following the vines to the melon. When the scholar heard this, he became angry. An ordinary citizen dared to point fingers at him. Just as he was about to explode, the youth waiting behind him said, "You'd better go and register. It's the same if you come back tomorrow. Don't stand here and waste other people's time." After saying that, the young man walked in front of him and handed over his token. After verifying the authenticity of the name and token, the soldier readily let him in. The scholar from before hurriedly flung his sleeves and angrily went to the side to register. On the other side, the scholars who had already entered let out exclamations of surprise. When they realized that they had lost their composure, they looked at the other people around them who were also stunned. They instantly felt better. They couldn't be blamed for being inexperienced. The scene inside the Golden Scale Pavilion was really beyond their expectations. Although it was called the Golden Scale Pavilion, there were more than one building and one pavilion inside. Currently, Only the main building of the Golden Scale Pavilion was open to the public, which was also the largest building in the Golden Scale Pavilion. Looking at the name on the signboard, the crowd felt strange. But when they read the meaning carefully, they could feel the heroic spirit that hit them in the face. It couldn't be more appropriate to give the main building of the Golden Scale Pavilion such a name. The main building was in the shape of a huge ring, and the area it occupied was actually larger than that of an ordinary two-sectioned house. There were 4 large doors, 8 small doors, and 36 wooden windows with hollow patterns. When the door was opened, the interior was brightly lit. Rows of bookshelves surrounded the building in a ring. Many of the bookshelves were already filled with paper books. There was a sign on each bookshelf, which briefly described the type of books on the bookshelf. The interior of the building was ingenious. The bookshelves themselves were divided into private rooms of various sizes. In the private rooms, there were mats for people to rest on. Apart from that, there was also a writing table and a set of brush and ink. What was even more amazing was the design of the dome on the second floor. It made full use of natural light. Even if there was no oil lamp in the room, as long as there was sufficient light outside, the room wouldn't feel dark when the windows on the second floor were opened. This is... The scholars who were qualified to enter the Golden Scale Pavilion approached one after another. Some of them were even so excited that they forgot to speak. The Golden Scale Pavilion. The well-deserved Golden Scale Pavilion. The crowd calmed down. Someone was about to step forward to take a book from the bookshelf, but was unexpectedly stopped by someone. Before that person could speak, the person explained, "Although the books in the Golden Scale Pavilion are free to read, you can't touch them casually. If you want to read any book, just ask someone to bring it to you. If you want to borrow books and copy them, bring your token over there to register. We will provide brush and ink at a low price." The Golden Scale Pavilion had just opened. They didn't want anyone to maliciously destroy books or hide them. Therefore, they had to set up a strict system at the beginning. When the public got used to it, the Golden Scale Pavilion could appropriately relax the borrowing system. When the crowd heard this, they were a little unhappy at first. But considering the price of paper books, it was reasonable for the Golden Scale Pavilion to be stricter. "There are so many books here," the manager said with a smile. "There are still 90% of books that are still in the bookstore and haven't been put on the shelves." There are still 90%? The others were so shocked that they couldn't speak. "Of course. There are still 60% of the bookshelves on the first floor that are empty. The second floor is completely empty." The crowd was so shocked that they were numb. One after another, they borrowed the books that they liked and found a well-lit place to read quietly. Rather than reading, it was more like they were stroking the pages with their fingers, as if they were caressing the skin of their loved ones. The touch was too good. They were even more shocked than when Suku saw the bamboo paper for the first time. The first batch of people who entered the Golden Scale Pavilion consisted of about 100 people. Almost all of them were book lovers. They treated the thread-bound books in their hands as if they were their ancestors. Not to mention destroying them, they didn't even dare to use a little bit of force. Seeing this, the manager of the Golden Scale Pavilion heaved a sigh of relief. Not long after, someone made a request to make a copy. That person looked nervous. He was afraid that his request would be rejected. It was good enough to let people read the books for free. Why would they let others make a copy? For most people, books weren't books. They were priceless treasures. They wouldn't lend them out easily. The receptionist smiled. She turned around and fetched a set of brush and ink as well as blank bamboo slips that had never been used before. These bamboo slips weren't provided for free, but the price was only 10% of the market price. Thank you." After the person thanked the receptionist, he took the things back to his seat. He read silently while making a copy. Unknowingly, the sun was setting. It was time for the bookstore to close. They returned the books reluctantly and stepped out of the Golden Scale Pavilion. Good reviews. Definitely 10 stars. Chapter 903. The popularity of the Golden Scale Pavilion continued to ferment. It was like a shy and delicate flower, emitting a rich and alluring fragrance that constantly attracted its prey to come one after another. The other feudal lords could only watch the heat. Jiang Pingji lived in Chongzhou, but she knew the situation in Wanzhou like the back of her hand. The fish in the pond have been kept for a long time. The fish are fat now. It's a good time to fish. She looked at the official documents sent by Su Ku and the others. Coincidentally, Qiguan Rang came in with a pile of bamboo slips. She hurriedly said, "Wenning, come over and help me draft a document." Qiguan Rang saw the smile on her face and could not help but ask, "Has something good happened, my lord?" Jiang Pengji smiled and said, "Of course it's something good. If it's done, I'll make up for the 3 years of vacation that I owe you." Qiguan Rang had worked for Jiang Pengji for more than 2 years. He had experienced 3 new years, but he had never taken a vacation. Although the salary was not low, it still could not make up for the bitterness of being busy from the beginning to the end of the year. His lord's credibility had fallen to the bottom. Unless Qiguan Rang was stupid, he would not believe a word about the vacation. He did not believe it, but he said, "All right, I'll grind the ink now." Jiang Pingji said, "Xiaoyu and Huayu told me that as of now, there are 3,963 scholars who have borrowed books from the Golden Scale Pavilion." When Qiguan Rang heard the number, he almost dropped the pen in his hand. There are 3,963 people? To enter the Golden Scale Pavilion, one had to go through a simple assessment. Only those who passed the assessment had the right to register their name and make a token. As long as they checked the number of tokens, they could know how many people had entered the Golden Scale Pavilion. Jiang Pingji also used this method to collect basic information about the scholars. Entering and exiting the Golden Scale Pavilion, borrowing books, and copying books had to be registered. Therefore, she could know how long each person had read, which books they had read, and which books they had copied. Based on the information, she could also roughly judge whether the person was eager to learn, whether they had perseverance, and how good their foundation was. Unknowingly, most of the information about these people had been leaked. Among these people, there is no lack of talented people. I plan to recruit targeted people. Although we are also cultivating our own talents, it will still take a few years. We can't always let one of you do the work of 10 people. If you become exhausted, I will feel distressed. The so-called conscription was actually a system to promote talents. As the governor of the prefecture, Jiang Pingji naturally had the right to do so. After Qiguan Rang heard this, he snorted softly and did not comment. If his lord took pity on them, why would she owe him 3 years of leave in a row? 3 years, 7 days of annual leave a year, a total of 21 days. They were all swallowed by his lord. Does my lord mean that you want to promote talents from among these scholars? Jiang Pingji said, "Of course. They've already sent themselves to me. How can I let them go so easily? I painstakingly built the Golden Scale Pavilion for them to study and learn for free. Could it be that I'm doing all this for someone else, so that they can rely on the other party after they grow up? We will first select those with good character and talent to alleviate the predicament of the shortage of manpower. As for the rest, you can come and go as you please." The corner of Qiguan Rang's mouth twitched. He had really underestimated his lord. She was really a good businessman. Her ability to pluck feathers from wild geese was amazing. If it was someone else, they might not have had such a good reaction like her. Not only could she draw inferences about other cases from one instance, but she could also exploit them over and over again. "My lord, I'm afraid it's difficult to distinguish who's better and who's worse based on this information alone." Jiang Pingji said with a smile, "This is simple. Why don't we use the banner of making friends through literature and set a few difficult questions to test everyone every day? Then let the prestigious scholars be the judges. They'll score everyone's answers and list out who's better and who's better. Every day, the top 3 will receive meal vouchers from the guest house. With a voucher, they can eat 3 meals a day at the guest house. Each meal will provide 2 meat dishes, 2 vegetables, and 1 soup for free. In this way, they could not only get a clear understanding of everyone's talents and knowledge, but they could also build a reputation for the guest house in Wanzhou." Qiguan Rang sighed as he wrote quickly. His lord was a profiteer who was held back by her ambition to dominate the world. Not long after, Qiguan Rang finished writing a document and handed it to Jiang Pingji to read. If there were no problems with the content, this document could be sent to Wanzhou urgently. By the way, Remember to get the messenger to look for Zhengtu and ask him if he wants to bring anything along. Why should I look for General Fu Wang? Qiguan Rang was surprised. Jiang Pengji pursed her lips and muttered, looking at the time, Hui Jun will be giving birth soon. Qiguan Rang understood immediately. If one did not live in this era where books were scarce, one would never understand people's thirst for knowledge. There were always students who waited outside the Jinlin pavilion before dawn. They only left reluctantly when the pavilion closed. Sometimes, they did not even have time to tidy up their appearances. They studied hard day and night, diligently practicing without stopping. In order not to kill anyone, Suk especially arranged for people to set up a free canteen in the Jinlin pavilion. Everyone could receive a bowl of thick meat porridge with their identity token. They even opened up a few quiet courtyards for the scholars to take a break or discuss scriptures in their spare time. In just 3 months, the name of the Jinlin Pavilion in Wanzhou had spread throughout the whole of Dongqing. It even had the tendency to spread to other countries. On this day, the scholars stayed in the Jinlin Pavilion as usual. Some frowned in deep thought, some discussed with their friends in low voices, and some copied seriously. At this moment, a notice quietly appeared in the Jinlin Pavilion. What's this? A commoner dressed in linen felt his stomach was empty. He carefully got up from his seat and was about to receive a bowl of meat porridge to fill his stomach when he happened to see the notice board outside the door. He fixed his eyes on it and revealed some confusion on his face. Guest house? What is this place? It was obvious that it was something created by merchants. It was full of the stench of money. The passing scholars frowned unhappily. The commoner said, "This guest house is a restaurant established by the magistrate of Liuzhou. The profits of the restaurant are used to settle down the orphans of the soldiers." Hearing that it was a restaurant established by Jiang Pingji, the scholar's expressions softened a little. If it was used in the right way, he could reluctantly tolerate merchants doing business in the Jinlin Pavilion. He also went forward to read the contents of the notice board carefully. He suddenly became interested. It was not that most of the scholars could not afford to eat. At the very least, the Jinlin Pavilion provided meat porridge for free. One bowl was enough to fill one's stomach. What they cared about was ranking and winning. If they answered well, they would gain the favor of the scholars and their social status would immediately rise to a higher level. Hearing the news, many interested scholars hurriedly brought their brushes, ink, and bamboo slips over to copy the questions. It was only the first day, but there were as many as 100 people who participated in answering the questions. Chapter 904. Of course, the so-called guidance was not teaching them face-to-face, but adding a few comments on the bamboo slips they submitted. Even so, when the first 3 scholars saw the name of the reviewer on the bamboo slips, they were so excited that they could not speak. The reviewer was none other than the famous teacher, Master Yuan Jing. In layman's terms, not only did they get their idol's autograph, but they also got their idol's guidance. They were so happy that they almost fainted. One should not think that idol chasing only existed in modern times. The ancient people were just as enthusiastic about idol chasing. Throwing fruits into a cart was a small matter. There were even brainless fans, who wrote poems to express their love for idol chasing every few days. Speaking of brainless fans, Master Yuan Jing had many brainless fans. A ready-made example was Tang Yao. He was Master Yuan Jing's brainless fan. With his admiration for Master Yuan Jing, he resolutely left his family and traveled thousands of miles to Langyi County to study. After the news spread, the number of people who submitted bamboo slips soared to thousands on the second day. Master Yuan Jing was speechless. The old man had to correct and read thousands of bamboo slips in one night. Therefore, for the sake of their lives, the exam that was supposed to be done once a day became once every 7 days. Cheng Cheng saw Master Yuan Jing's pale face and took the initiative to help him review. If he was lucky, he could discover young people with potential. It turned out that Jiang Pingji's method was very effective. Don't look at how there were only 10 questions each time, but each question hit a very targeted probe. Most of the scholars did not realize that there was something fishy about it. Only a few people who were more sensitive noticed it. Faintly, they felt that it was related to their future, so they paid more attention to the questions. Every time, They deliberated over the questions repeatedly before writing. They did not give a general answer. Instead, they chose to explore deeply, speak freely, and express their opinions directly. In fact, most of the people's literary talent could not catch Master Yuanjing's attention, but he could occasionally find one or two outstanding works that made his eyes light up. After a few corrections, Master Yuanjing smiled helplessly. There are many moldable talents among them. There is an 80% chance that they will be recruited by the magistrate of Liuzhou. From the contents of the previous answers, many people had realized the hidden meaning behind the 10 questions. At first, they were perfunctory. Later on, they were very attentive. Even a fool could see the motivation behind this change. Jiang Pengji was not very attractive to the scholars who came from aristocratic families. What about those scholars from poor families? Once they were fortunate enough to receive Jiang Pengji's conquests, it was tantamount to reaching the sky in a single bound. The road to success was directly paved under their feet. Cheng Cheng thought for a moment and said, although the Lu Prefecture's overseer is powerful, there aren't many people who can be used. Naturally, he has to recruit talents. This kind of assessment method was truly unheard of and unseen. Compared to this, I'm worried about something else. When Yuan Jing heard that, he immediately understood what Cheng Cheng was worried about. Conscription was a way to promote talents. However, this was not a one-way way. It was a two-way street and did not have any coercive power. Conquests were also a form of courtesy. The conquered could gladly accept the offer, but he could also decline it. Jiang Pengji had the right to conquer someone in her territory, and that person also had the right to reject her. If they didn't accept the conquests, some people did it because they really did not want to be an official. They wanted to live in seclusion and live a carefree life. Some people wanted to gain reputation. For example, if a beautiful girl from a poor family rejected the love of a domineering CEO, the beautiful girl would instantly become famous. Of course, there was a third situation, which was to keep people in suspense. In layman's terms, some people felt that the easier it was to get, the less it would be treasured. Therefore, they would decline it again and again. When the other party's appetite was at its highest, they would gladly accept the conquests, and it would become a good story between the ruler and the minister. Conscription not accepting was an unspoken rule in the industry. Generally, people would refuse the first time and only agree to be an official after the second or third time. Cheng Cheng was a little worried. Would the seedlings he favored lose their minds and play conscription in front of Jiang Pengji? Based on his understanding of the governor, he was proud. If she was rejected once, she would not do it a second time. Those who wanted to keep people in suspense would go overboard. Master Yuan Jing and Cheng Cheng looked at each other tacitly. They suddenly felt an indescribable sense of melancholy. They felt that there would definitely be people who would not accept the conscription. As expected, there were people who did it. There was more than one person. After several attempts, the talent assessment was almost done. Su Ke followed Jiang Pengji's wishes and extended an olive branch to the 28 young people. Among the 28 people, 10 were born poor, 11 were from destitute gentry families, and the other 7 were from gentry families with average family backgrounds. They were all between 20 and 40 years old. They were in their golden years and had a lot of room for nurturing. In the end, among the 28 people, 20 accepted the conscription, and the rest all rejected. Su Ke was speechless. When he heard the news, his expression was as black as the bottom of a pot. Reading for free, borrowing books, copying books, freeloading the meat porridge provided by the Golden Scale Pavilion, eating to their heart's content with meal vouchers from the reception house. During the conscription, they should at least give them some face. How could they reject them so decisively? Would it kill them to be a little more tactful and save face for both sides? How infuriating! Su Ke was so angry that he could not swallow his rice. Wanzhou had spent a lot of effort to select 28 people from thousands of people, but nearly 1/3 of them had rejected the conscription. At that moment, Su Ke could not help but think, just how despised was Wanzhou. What place in Dongqing could be more peaceful than here? This was already considered a paradise in troubled times, right? When other places could not afford to pay salaries, The average salary in Wanzhou was very high, okay? Benefits were also available. After the probation period, they would immediately have a car, a house, and savings. They would be at the peak of their lives. What a beautiful prospect. The only shortcoming of their master was her gender. In other conditions, she could crush the other feudal forces with 100% certainty. So what if she was a woman? Did she eat their rice? Or did these people think that the forces in Wanzhou were still grassroots and did not deserve to have a golden phoenix? Su Ku wanted to scratch his hair in frustration, but he restrained the impulse. As the chief accountant of Wanzhou and the big boss in charge of finance, he could not lose his composure. Therefore, Su Ku's mind was unusually active, but he appeared cold on the surface. He stared at the document on the table as if he was staring at an enemy. It was not until Feng Jin entered that he saw him like this that he went forward to read the contents of the document. After reading it, his brows furrowed. These people really don't know what's good for them. Su Ku said through gritted teeth. Feng Jin smiled and said, "Indeed. Since they didn't accept the conscription, then they should just choose someone else. There's no need to be angry." Su Ku's face was gloomy. He said, "How can I not be angry? If word gets out now, won't my lord be laughed at?" It was fine if 28 people were to be conscripted at once, but 8 people had rejected it. Wasn't this a slap in the face? Feng Jin said in surprise, "What does this have to do with my lord being laughed at?" Jin had also seen the answers of these people, and they were indeed quite talented. There's ambition in their words. I'm afraid the reason why they rejected the conscription is to build momentum and build a reputation for themselves. One more conscription will do. Su Ku suddenly understood, but then he said angrily, "With my lord's temperament, how can she do a second conscription?" Feng Jin said straightforwardly, "Then ignore it. There are other candidates anyway." Chapter 905. There was only one chance. If he didn't grasp it, how could he blame others for not giving him a second chance? How could that be? Feng Jin smiled and comforted Su Ku, in case his colleague was angered to the point of causing trouble. It wasn't that Su Ku didn't understand this, but he was still a little indignant. After a while, he said, "No matter what, we still have to consult the Lord about this and see what she decides." Feng Jin said, "Of course." Even though they understood Jiang Pingji's temper and knew that she wouldn't go for a second conscription, they couldn't make decisions for her. As expected, Jiang Pingji, who was far away in Chongzhou, received the news. She was so angry that she wanted to laugh. The conscription was rejected? Since they don't think highly of me, I won't force them. Wenjing, draft a document and tell Xiaoyu what to do. Everything will be done according to the rules. Although 20 people agreed, we still don't have enough manpower. Let him continue to filter. Qiguan Rang cupped his hands in acknowledgement. No matter what reason they had for rejecting the conscription, Jiang Pingji would grant them their wish. There was only one chance, and it was always given to those who were prepared, who would stretch out their face to be slapped a second time after being slapped in the face once. She didn't want her dignity. In the words of the livestream viewers, one had to have the capital to be pretentious. If he wasn't Zhuge Liang, why would he bother with 3 visits to the thatched cottage? Shu Shanyali, streamer, don't be angry. Pat your head. Luoyu treading on flowers. It's their loss to lose the chance. Without these people, there are still millions of talents waiting for the streamer. Xiao Xiao. In modern times, the streamer is like the CEO of a company. They are freshmen who applied for a job. The company has already decided to hire them, but the freshmen arrogantly rejected them. At this point, they still expect the company's CEO to personally invite them? Do they really think they're Zhuge Liang? Pia Liang. I realize that your focus is a little off. Isn't the focus on the streamer's method of promoting talents? The bullet screen was quickly drowned out by the sea of bullet screens. Qiguan Rang, who was at the side, stole a glance at Feng Jin. He noticed that the latter was smiling with his eyes squinted, as if he was watching a good show from the sidelines. At noon, Qiguan Rang and Feng Jin went out together. He lowered his voice and asked, "Zisher, what were you laughing at just now?" Feng Jin held a bag of dried and pickled radishes in his hands. He ate them as he walked. He had stolen them from the Chongzhou guest house branch. It was salty with a hint of spiciness and could be used as a snack to grind the teeth. Fortunately, Qiguan Rang wasn't Feng Jin. Otherwise, how could he stand the sight of Feng Jin chewing on dried carrots as he walked? She would definitely reprimand him for his lack of manners. Feng Jin laughed and said, "If I don't laugh, am I supposed to go forward and advise my lord to be magnanimous?" "Of course not." Qiguan Rang furrowed his brows and said, "Those 8 people? What a pity." It was an unspoken rule in the industry to refuse a conquest. As long as the person wasn't uninterested in fame or looked down on others, they would usually agree to a second conquest. Feng Jin said, "Don't you know the Lord's temperament?" She was very clear in her heart, but she was unwilling to put down her pride and go on a second expedition. Without these 8 people, there would always be others to fill in. If the person who failed was a peerless genius who could conquer the world, he would have the resources to do so, but he was not. It's already good enough that my lord didn't curse him in her heart, let alone go on a second expedition. Qiguan Rang let out a long sigh. How could he not know this? "I'm afraid that my lord will be criticized and scolded for being narrow-minded. Can you tolerate such words?" What he was afraid of was taking advantage of the situation and directly using his lord's gender as an excuse, saying that a woman was a woman, short-sighted and narrow-minded. Other people could be magnanimous enough to go on a second expedition, but why was she so unreasonable when it came to her putting on airs after being rejected once? She was so unforgiving and unworthy. Didn't she know that talented people were precious and needed to be accommodated? Feng Jin laughed and said, "Of course I can't tolerate it, but forcing my lord to bend over and do something she doesn't want to do is even more intolerable." Qiguan Rang glanced at Feng Jin. From his words, it was as if he couldn't bear to see his lord suffer. He raised his hand and snatched the dried carrots from Feng Jin's hand. "Let's see what else this guy could eat." Feng Jin cried out in sorrow, "Let's talk things out. Don't steal my snacks." When the news reached Wanzhou, Su Ku and the others already knew what to do. The first batch of people who agreed to go on the expedition had long been thrown to their posts to hone themselves. He, Feng Jin, and the others still had to keep an eye on them at all times to prevent any mistakes. The few of them were still steady and honest, and now they were on the right track. With these people, Su Ku clearly felt his workload lighten. Finally, he didn't have to go home day and night. After receiving Jiang Pingji's reply, Su Ku immediately started on the second expedition. This time, he focused on selecting talents in agriculture and water conservancy. Even when the second batch of names was out, the first batch of people who failed to go on the expedition were still anxiously waiting for news. After waiting for a long time, there was still no news. Finally, someone couldn't sit still. This person had used a lot of connections to find out the news. He felt as if he had been struck by lightning. "My lord said that a melon that is forcefully picked won't be sweet. Since you have other plans, I wish you success in your career." The person was so angry that his face turned pale. He was ashamed, angry, and embarrassed. Finally, he snorted coldly and angrily flicked his sleeves. A woman is a woman after all. She is shallow and narrow-minded. What kind of future can someone who seeks revenge for the smallest grievance have? Even if we don't talk about being courteous, we should at least have tolerance and magnanimity. Now that I've seen her, she really isn't worth it to rely on. A real man has aspirations. How can he succumb to a woman whose eyelids are as small as beans? It's painful and pitiful. Out of the 8 people who failed to go on the expedition, only 2 chose to remain silent. The other 6 couldn't bear the injustice. They didn't shout abuse, but when they talked about the world's situation with their friends, they would always criticize Jiang Pingji. Once their friends spoke up for Jiang Pingji, they would always be refuted. This woman's eyes are as small as beans. If she didn't rely on the reputation of her father, Lu Shi, how could she have the foundation she has today? She's just a woman. Does she really think she can overturn the universe and reverse yin and yang? Don't be fooled by her limitless glory now. In fact, there are many hidden dangers. So what if she controls Chongzhou, Wanzhou, and Hu County? The northern borderline is eyeing her covetously in the north, and the fake emperor is preparing for war in the south. Let's wait and see how long this ignorant woman can be arrogant. Most of the literati cared about their reputation. Even if they didn't say anything, they wouldn't scold her for getting free food, drinks, and books. These people were particularly unconventional and stood out from the crowd. The establishment of the Jinling Pavilion in Wanzhou attracted many scholars to flock there. These people stimulated the domestic demand of the economy. Not only did they make Wanzhou's economy flourish, but they also made Wanzhou's literary style flourish. Many like-minded scholars gathered together. They either discussed poetry, gave advice on the country, or recited poems and paintings. The literary atmosphere was strong. The literary gathering was open to the public. Naturally, the words and deeds of these people spread to the ears of Su Ku and the others. Bastards, such despicable people, they're simply. Su Ku was so angry that he slammed the table. It was almost the end of the month. He had to handle more and more things. He slept less and was in a bad mood. Now that he heard slander, he almost exploded with anger. Cheng Yuan passed by the door with a stack of bamboo slips in his arms. He heard the commotion inside and let out a long sigh. Su Ku's temper had always been good. Who had the ability to make him so irritable? Chapter 906. Jiang Pingji had always treated the civil and military officials under her as little dukes, but how could they not treat their lord as a daughter and accommodate her? Su Ku was so angry that her menopause was acting up prematurely. The vile person in her heart had already turned into a shrew. She wanted nothing more than to roll up her sleeves and kill those people. If he didn't give them a few slaps, he wouldn't know why the flowers were so red. Did they really think that Wanzhou was a charity? Did he really think that they were the stupidest idiots in the world? Did he really think that he could borrow, copy, and read the rich books of the Golden Scale Pavilion without any scruples? Motherf ***, eat their food, use their food, live in their house, read their books, and in the end put down her bowl and chopsticks and scold them? Which emperor gave him the right to do so? Seeing that the black aura surrounding Su Ku was getting thicker and thicker, as if he had hit a bottleneck, Wanzhou's chief steward Su Ku finally flipped out. Gong Liao, come in. When Cheng Yuan, who happened to pass by, heard this, his scalp went numb. He had an ominous premonition. Even though Su Ku had been in charge of internal affairs all these years and was practically rooted in Xiangyang district, rarely going out for official business, Cheng Yuan did not dare to look down on him. Official Registrar Su, what can I do for you? Su Ku said with a gloomy face, there's something I want you to do. Ruining his mistress's reputation in Wanzhou was no longer just taking advantage of her. If this matter reaches the ears of the Lord, she will definitely reprimand us for not governing properly. It was fine if she was reprimanded, but she was afraid that the world would misunderstand that the Lord was not strict in her governance, that she was timid, and that anyone could humiliate her. Gong Liao, do you understand? Cheng Yuan said, I understand. In layman's terms, anyone who bullied their lord would be crushed to death. Su Ku's expression softened a little as he said to Cheng Yuan, Gong Liao, come closer and talk. Cheng Yuan obediently stepped forward and sat down beside Su Ku's desk. The two of them whispered to each other. When Cheng Yuan heard this, his expression changed from solemnity to surprise, and finally to pity. Originally, he was filled with righteous indignation at those people who had failed in the conquest, but now, he felt some sympathy for them. Of all the people he could have offended, why did he have to offend these unreasonable people from Wanzhou? His father was right. Wanzhou was a place with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Su Ku was indeed of humble birth, but when it came to managing internal affairs, he ranked in the top 3 in the entire Wanzhou group. In the whole of Dongqing, he was probably in the top 5. Not only was this person in charge of internal affairs, but he was also deeply trusted by the Lord. There was almost no mess that he could not solve. Once Su Ku made up his mind to punish someone, he could really do it. Cheng Yuan had a mild temperament. His greatest strength was that he was obedient and filial. Cheng Cheng asked him to restrain his edge and learn humbly. He would never stand out. He followed Cheng Cheng's instructions and assisted Su Ku and the others. While he was busy, He learned how to manage the overall situation and accumulate experience for the future. My lord is ambitious, and her vision will definitely not be limited to one state or one county. When the shop was completely opened in the future, she would definitely send her trusted aides to various places. That would be a good opportunity for Qing Yuan to display his talents. In the end, Qing Yuan said worriedly, "Registrar Su, if we do this, I'm afraid the outside world will say something bad about the lord. For example, as the lord of a province, he didn't have the magnanimity to tolerate and insisted on competing with a few scholars who said the wrong things. How shameful was that?" Su Ku sneered and said, "Do you think the common people have more mouths or those pedantic scholars have more mouths?" This time, Qing Yuan did not speak. Su Ku said, "I remember that Zixiao had a very good saying." Qing Yuan asked curiously, "What did Master Zixiao say?" "Offend anyone but not a writer." At that time, Qing Yuan did not understand what it meant, but after a few days, he understood. The scholars who failed in the conquests spouted nonsense and slandered Jiang Pingji everywhere. For several days in a row, there was no reaction from Wanzhou. The 6 of them were even more rampant, jumping up and down incessantly. The other 2 still wanted to save face, wishing that their presence could be reduced to 0. Brothers, what does this mean? It means that the magistrate of Wanzhou also knows that gossip is a fearful thing and has admitted defeat. Those people in Wanzhou are just actors from a grassroots troupe, inferior people who don't know Confucius and Mencius. I'm ashamed to be associated with them. A man is indomitable. Not to mention establishing a career, but he can't be subservient to a woman. If anyone were to accept the conquests, wouldn't they be admitting that they were inferior to an ignorant woman? It's really shameful and ridiculous for a man to lose all his courage. I'm afraid that even in the underworld, he'll still be slapped by his ancestors. They refused the conquests not to raise their value and reputation, but because they completely disdained it, understand? They disdained to work for a woman. The more they danced, the more cowardly Wanzhou appeared. Their uncharacteristic silence made many people laugh at them. However, they were soon unable to laugh. If Su Ku did not show his power, did they really think he was a housekeeper? The questions for this round are out. They're out? Let's go take a look. A test every 7 days had now become a routine, and it had faintly become one of the ways to select talents in Wanzhou. This way did not require family background, appearance, or virtue, only ability and talent. If they met the standards, even if they came from a humble background, they could still enter the eyes of the forces in Wanzhou. For many poor children who sought refuge with no families, this was a golden opportunity to leap over the Dragon's Gate. Every time the results were released, it would always attract a large number of scholars to come and watch. A group of people gathered in front of the notice board. Except for a few simple-minded people, the others saw the questions clearly and felt a chill in their hearts. Unlike the 10 questions announced in the past, there was only one question this time. Repaying enmity with kindness? How do you repay kindness? What kind of question is this? The saint has already given the answer, so of course it's repaying enmity with kindness. No one knew which simple-minded person spoke up, but everyone's expressions did not look too good. This answer had been stamped by the saint, so of course they knew, but when they thought about recent events, they felt that things were not looking good. How is this a test? It's clearly a declaration of war, someone couldn't help but mutter. What declaration of war? There were quite a lot of simple-minded people. They only cared about being top students and didn't hear the gossip of the outside world. So, Wanzhou is clearly telling others that they want to repay enmity with kindness. Not to mention anything else, at least Wanzhou had built the Golden Scale Pavilion and provided tens of thousands of books for them to read for free. Was this not kindness? Many people received kindness but did not know how to be grateful and shamelessly made a false accusation. Was this not resentment? Therefore, Wanzhou could not be blamed for choosing to repay enmity directly to get back at them. They could only blame the ungrateful ingrates for being too arrogant. Naturally, the 6 people had also seen the contents of the notice. Except for the 3 scholars from poor families who were anxious, the other 3 did not take it to heart. If Wanzhou really had the ability, They could have just sent people to arrest them. Why did they have to take such a roundabout route? Unfortunately, these people did not know that in another plane far away, there was an honest and upright official named Chen Shimi. Otherwise, they would not have such a stupid idea. Chen Shimi was a good and honest official. Because he had offended a screenwriter, he had become a peerless scumbag whose name would be passed down through the ages. Chapter 907. When it came to scumbags, they thought of Chen Shimi. They thought of how he abandoned his wife and son in order to curry favor with the rich and powerful. He could be said to be the representative of scumbags since ancient times. How many people knew that not only did Chen Shimi not abandon his wife and son, but he was also an honest, upright, and outspoken official? This was the power of scholars. With a pen, they could poke a person on the pillar of shame in history and be spurned by people for generations to come. As for the truth? Haven't you heard of this saying, open your mouth to start a rumor, but run your legs to refute it? The people loved melodramatic gossip and preferred stories with ups and downs. As for the truth, few people cared. That Lu Shi is really a shrew. Does she want to shed all pretense of cordiality and hold it against us? She's a woman. How can she not hold a grudge? Someone snorted disdainfully, but there was a flash of guilt in his eyes. However, this trace of guilt was quickly buried. Jinlin Pavilion was open to the public for free. They had also obtained the right to enter the pavilion. Of course, they were qualified to enjoy all the benefits inside. They did not owe Wanzhou anything. Whether it was borrowing books, copying books, or other benefits, they were all voluntarily provided by Wanzhou. Since it was voluntary, they could not be considered to have received Wanzhou's favor. In this way, how could it be considered to be returning good for evil? Did Wanzhou still want to act like a hooligan and demand repayment? They verbally despised Jiang Pingji's gender, but they were not too stupid. After all, Jiang Pingji had power and influence, but they did not. When they saw the topic on the notice board, they panicked for a while, then immediately comforted themselves. 2 days passed and nothing happened. As expected, it's just a bluff. They had been quiet for 2 days, but now they jumped out again. Not only did they slander Jiang Pingji, but they even criticized Jinlin Pavilion. No matter how they became famous, at least their reputation was better than many unknown people. Black and red were still red. However, the atmosphere was not right. Soon they could not laugh anymore. The scholars who had been chatting with them were all gone. Every time they approached them to discuss something, they would always be rejected with all sorts of reasons. When many familiar faces saw their faces, they covered their noses with their sleeves and quickly walked around them. Occasionally, they could even hear people whispering and glancing at them from time to time. Their eyes were filled with disdain. My dear brothers, in the courtyard of the poetry meet, he saw a few friends sitting on the ground in the distance. Everyone had a satisfied smile on their faces, as though they were discussing something. One of them came forward, but before he could bow, the others scattered like birds and beasts. That person stood rooted to the ground like a block of wood. His face turned red and then green. He was both embarrassed and angry. With great difficulty, he managed to stop a young, thin, and weak scholar and interrogate him. No matter what, he was still a fighter who dared to fight against power. Why did others treat him like this? The scholar said, "You still don't know what happened? I've been focused on studying the ancient books these days. How could I have the time to care about what's going on outside?" There were too many good books in the Golden Scale Pavilion, and he always felt that he didn't have enough time to study. When the scholar from a poor family heard this, the disdain in the depths of his eyes deepened. Before he could react, the scholar said, "If you don't know, you can go to the Golden Scale Market for a while and you'll know." After saying this, the scholar from a poor family was afraid that others would see him mingling with him, so he hurriedly left. The Golden Scale Market was a commercial market not far from the Golden Scale Pavilion. It was also specially built by Jiang Pingji. The Golden Scale Pavilion brought a large flow of people, which was an excellent business opportunity. The flow of people was huge, and the business was prosperous. Many people embarked on the road to becoming rich. The Golden Scale Market was full of shops. This was an era where entertainment was lacking. Only Wanzhou had some variety. Many scholars liked to listen to storytellers there. Under Wei Si's leadership, the storytelling industry in Wanzhou was under the unified jurisdiction of the government. The industry rules were strict. He even found a few talented novelists who specialized in collecting current affairs and gossip. He asked them to compile them into novels and used the storytellers' mouths to tell them to the people. He also set a rule: absolutely no one could say anything unfavorable to Jiang Pingji, not even half a word. Of course, they could not be overly exaggerated. They tried their best to let the people understand a real lord. Wei Si used entertainment to control public opinion, and now it was beginning to show results. The people loved their Wanzhou magistrate very much. There were even unmarried women who cried and shouted that they wanted to marry her, even if she was a woman. This meme was even adapted into a script by the novelist. It became the most popular novel in Wanzhou for a time. Probably because the novelist's literary talent was too good, many people were moved to tears. Say, why can't lovers be together in the end? So what if they are both women? Infatuated people should be treated gently. Stories like this made the bystanders dumbfounded. However, the dumbfounded protagonist today was someone else. That person heard the words of the scholar and hurried to the golden scale market. When he passed by a tea house, he suddenly heard his name. He looked in the direction of the voice and saw many people surrounding the tea house. A storyteller in a scholarly robe was telling a story with great emotion. He stood still and listened for a while. His expression became darker and darker. After a long time, the storyteller patted the ruler and said, "If you want to know more, listen to the next chapter." After saying that, he returned to his seat and drank a mouthful of tea to moisten his lips. The people nearby wailed, "You old man, aren't you a little too disloyal? Why are you deliberately blocking here and making people unable to go up or down?" That's right. Finish it in one go. If you don't finish, I feel like there's a cat scratching at my heart. Sigh, I can't sleep today. Even storytellers can't be so broken. You're obviously deliberately leaving people hanging. One day, with a knife in hand, I'll kill all the sequence-breaking dogs in the world. The storyteller raised his eyelids and said, "How is it that I'm unwilling to speak? It's clearly that I haven't gotten the manuscript for the next chapter." The people fell silent, but after a moment, they were filled with righteous indignation again. That Zhao Kuang is really shameless. He holds his bowl to eat and then puts it down to curse. Even the women in the brothel wouldn't be so shameless. Hey, I'm not happy when you say that. What's wrong with the women in the brothel? They give money in one hand and take off their pants in the other. It's a proper transaction. They're not like those people, each more shameless than the other. It's just like the book said. More than 10 years of sage books have been learned by the dog. When Zhao Kuang, who was outside the tea house, heard this, his chest tightened and he almost vomited blood. He hurriedly grabbed someone to ask about the contents of the book. That person was also enthusiastic and opened his mouth. A young man named Zhao Kuang heard that a free academy had opened in another country. He and 5 like-minded friends went there to study. Unexpectedly, they encountered bandits and the 6 of them got separated. Zhao Kuang was also lucky. He was saved by a simple tree demon in the mountains. Zhao Kuang was surprised by the beauty of the tree demon. He used flowery words to trick the tree demon into liking him and coaxed the simple tree demon to follow him. Little did he know that Zhao Kuang already had a wife in his hometown. A few days later, Zhao Kuang continued on his journey with the money provided by the tree demon. When he arrived at the academy, Zhao Kuang squandered without restraint. He pretended to be a noble son of an aristocratic family and gained the favor of a great scholar surnamed Lu. The great scholar felt that Zhao Kuang's temperament wasn't firm. After testing him, he didn't intend to put him in an important position. Coincidentally, Zhao Kuang heard that the great scholar had countless books and went to borrow some from the great scholar. The great scholar borrowed them and Zhao Kuang benefited greatly from the books. Using this opportunity, he received help from a noble and was promoted all the way. After he became famous, the tree demon came to Zhao Kuang to repay his debt. However, Zhao Kuang said that the tree demon had bewitched him and burned him to death. When the great scholar heard this, he felt indignant for the tree demon. Everyone knew that the great scholar had lent books to Zhao Kuang, but Zhao Kuang said that his success was all due to his talent and that it had nothing to do with the great scholar borrowing books. Chapter 908. After saying so much, his tongue was dry. The scholar hurriedly asked, "What's next?" The storyteller cursed his bad luck. "There's nothing else." The story had just reached the most fascinating part, but there was nothing else. No wonder the commoners were so angry. Nothing else. The commoner curled his lips. There was a hint of anger in his words. He raised his hand and pointed at the storyteller in the room. "Didn't you hear what that bastard old man said? The next chapter hasn't been written yet, but according to tradition, Zhao Huang, that shameless villain, will not have a good ending." The scholar was furious when he heard this. He said angrily, "You're just a commoner. Who gave you the guts to talk about a scholar? Wasn't Zhao Huang his name?" The commoner in front of him said in front of him that he would not have a good ending. How could Zhao Huang take this lying down? Zhao Huang flew into a rage without warning. The commoner was shocked. After coming back to his senses, the commoner also became angry. He said, "That's the convention. Who dares to violate the rules of this industry? Unless the writer, Xiantu layman, doesn't want to stay in Wanzhou anymore." Wei Xi's purpose in supporting novelists was to control public opinion. As the initiator, he had the right to set perfect rules for the novel industry. In addition to the previous rules, Wei Xi also stipulated that the spirit of the novel must be positive. What was positive? The content of the story must not involve vulgar filth, and the main theme must be correct. The first rule was easy to understand, but the latter was complicated. Whether it was the protagonist or the supporting role, once involved, there must be no happy ending, including but not limited to repaying kindness with enmity, abandoning one's wife and children, favoring one's concubine and killing one's wife, marrying another, not distinguishing between legitimate and concubine, being unkind to parents, being filial to children, being disrespectful to elders, and being heartless to children. According to the severity of the plot, the characters would suffer different degrees of setbacks. Zhao Huang in the story had already violated several rules. According to the rules of the industry, Zhao Huang's ending would not be good. The commoners kept up with the updates for several days. Their dislike of Zhao Huang had reached its peak. As the plot developed, the tree demon and great scholar Lu were also in danger because of Zhao Huang's framing. They were having a good time listening to the novel. Next, the wicked would get fancy retribution, but there was nothing below. The real-life version of Zhao Huang was furious. What the hell was Xiantu layman? How dare he use his name to write such a lowly novel? It would have been fine if it was a coincidence that they shared the same name, but it was not. In the story, Zhao Kuang clearly had a family, but he still lied and said that he was not married, tricking the pure and innocent tree demon into giving him his heart. In reality, Zhao Kuang also had a family. When he heard that Wanzhou had the Golden Scale Pavilion, he yearned for it very much. He left his old parents in the care of a child bride who was already married. Along the way, he used his talent to deceive an ignorant village girl, and after a one-night stand, he ran away with her money. In the story, Zhao Huang was born into a family of bricklayers. He used his parents' hard-earned money to disguise himself as a second-generation rich kid, ignoring his crippled father and blind mother. In reality, Zhao Huang was born into a wealthy family in the countryside. His parents sold 6 of his sisters to support his education, and he pretended to be the son of a rich man in front of his friends. In the story, Zhao Kuang borrowed the great scholar's book to have the opportunity to further his studies, but in the end, he made a false accusation and wanted to kill the great scholar. In reality, Zhao Kuang enjoyed the benefits of the Golden Scale Pavilion. After failing to conquer it, he slandered and insulted the governor of Lu province, trying to make a name for himself by stepping on him. With so many similarities, how could Zhao Kuang not care? How was this a story? It was obviously a deliberate allusion to him, and even the name was copied. The common people did not know, But how could the scholars who spent their days in the Golden Scale Pavilion not know? No wonder these few days, some scholars who got along with him avoided him. The crux of the problem was actually this. The common people were inexplicably bombarded by Zhao Kuang. Before he could get angry, Zhao Kuang had already flung his sleeves and left. Since the governor of Lu province used such a method to deal with him, don't blame him for being heartless. Jiang Pengji was really wronged. She was so busy, how could she have the time to care about one or two small shrimps? Zhao Kuang shamelessly stayed in the Golden Scale Pavilion. In his opinion, being ostracized and treated coldly by a few scholars was nothing. It was naive and laughable that the governor of Lu province wanted to use such a method to deal with him. Did the matter end there? Of course not. Monk Xiangfeng was a penholder in Wanzhou. He was best at writing all kinds of stories, and he was quite famous in the streets. This time, he did not write one story, but 6 short stories linked together to form a series. In addition to the legend of Zhao Kuang, there were 5 other books. The male protagonist of each book was an ungrateful person. His actions were hateful and made people's teeth itch. After writing 2 short stories, the gossipy common people found the prototype of the male protagonist through clues. After understanding it in detail, they exploded in anger. Was their governor someone who could be insulted by just anyone? How could an ungrateful person have the face to stand on the land of Wanzhou? Was it reasonable to return evil for good? *CK off. Why didn't he just soar to the sky on the monkey? Coincidentally, at this time, the people who used return evil for good? How do you repay good? The test results for this topic were out. Zhao Kuang and the others wanted to cry but had no tears. They discovered that many scholars used their incident as an example. Their words were harsh and merciless. The situation continued to worsen. The landlord of the folk house, a small temple cannot accommodate a great Buddha. I don't want the rent for 10 days. Let's go, let's go. The waiter of the tea house, we are all serious businessmen. We only do business as human beings, not animals. Don't block the way. The manager of the restaurant, I'm sorry, sir. There's a sign in front of the door. Our land is barren and unruly, full of wicked people. 2 strong men with thick arms and wooden mallets stood at the door. 2 pairs of tiger eyes stared at them fiercely, like wild beasts looking for food. Not to mention the tea house, the wine shop, the street vendors, even the brothel, which welcomed everyone, did not entertain them. One of them was particularly unlucky. One night, he went to the brothel to seek pleasure. The next day, he woke up to find that his buttocks were in pain. There were even streaks of blood hanging from them. Not only did he fail to pluck flowers for pleasure, his chrysanthemum was stolen by some bastard. They underestimated the respect and love the people of Wanzhou had for Jiang Pengji and the influence of public opinion. Seeing their reputation destroyed, they could only flee with their tails between their legs in the end. Although they left, their story continued to spread in Wanzhou. It was even exported to Chongzhou, Hu County, and other places. 2 months later, Jiang Pengji happened to find out about it. She was almost amused by Su Ke's actions. Jiang Pengji said to Fengzhen, Xiaoyu, you don't have to be so angry. They're just a few scholars who don't know how to appreciate favors. They insulted me. Just chase them out of the Jinling Pavilion and blacklist them forever. Why do you have to go through all this trouble? Chapter 909. Although he said he was making a mountain out of a molehill, he was very happy in his heart. Jiang Pengji said, according to what you said, none of the scholars who entered the Jinling Pavilion dared to scold me? Humans have a face and trees have a bark. Not everyone is as shameless as those people, Fengzhen said with a sinister smile. The scholars of the world have received favors from our Lord, so it's naturally inconvenient for them to reprimand you. As long as you don't do anything that infuriates the heavens and the people, your reputation should be fine. She established the Jinling Pavilion and gave favors to the scholars in the world. As long as the scholars still had some dignity, they would not easily fall out with Jiang Pengji. Jiang Pengji pinched her chin. She felt that Fengzhen's words made sense. Since I'm doing you a favor, I'll do it to the end. Feng Zhen was surprised. What idea did my lord come up with this time? Jiang Pengji took out a booklet from her sleeve. Feng Zhen took it and looked at it. The 4 words, Daoist's rhyming book, were written neatly on the cover. Feng Zhen smiled bitterly after reading it. I'm already in my 30s. Why would I still need to read Daoist Yun? Keep it for yourself, my lord. The so-called Daoist rhyme book was basically the ancient version of Pinyin, similar to the Qiyun and Guanyin that the livestream viewers were familiar with. The creator of Great Xia rhyme was Prime Minister Huangfu of the previous dynasty. The phonetic transcription of the Great Xia rhyming book was divided into 2 types, straight phonetic and reverse cut. Straight phonetic was to use homophones to transcribe the phonetic of a word, while reverse cut was to use 2 commonly used words to transcribe the phonetic of a word. For example, the direct pronunciation of Kong is the transcription of Kong, and the reverse is K and Ong. Thanks to this book of rhymes of the Great Xia dynasty, after the Great Xia dynasty split up, the official language of the 5 countries became the same. Otherwise, there would be different dialects in the world, and it would be impossible for them to communicate properly. Children had to memorize the initial consonants and final consonants in the Daoist rhyming book for the sake of learning in the future. However, the scarier part was that there were 49 initial consonants and 181 final consonants in Daoist rhyming book. Before Meng Tong's enlightenment, he had to memorize 230 common words. In layman's terms, before teaching a person how to read, the person must have a certain level of literacy. He had to memorize 230 commonly used words in Great Xia rhyming book before he could use these words to mark the pronunciations of other words. Children's enlightenment was slow, and it was difficult for the common people to develop their wisdom. The difficulty of phonetic transcription was also a huge obstacle. Jiang Pengji said, "You'll know once you open it." Feng Zhen was suspicious. He lifted his hand and opened the book. He discovered that the title page also had the words, Daoist Dynasty's Rhyming Book, written on it. There were also strange symbols beside each word. He was puzzled and raised his head to look at Jiang Pengji's face. He realized that she was looking at him with a face full of expectation. Feng Zhenan suppressed his emotions and flipped through a few more pages. It was filled with familiar words, but there were tiny symbols around each word. He was puzzled. Could it be that the secret lied in these symbols? Feng Zhen thought about it and began to carefully search for the similarities between these symbols. Indeed, he really did find some patterns. The more he searched, the more frightened Feng Zhen became. It was rare for Langzi to put his heart and soul into something, and the audience in the live broadcast room was also writing at a great speed. They all knew that Jiang Pengji came from the interstellar world of the future, but she had never spoken a word of her hometown. She didn't even write the word hometown. How could he miss out on such a rare opportunity? This was a good opportunity to study the language of the future. Jiang Pengji saw that Feng Zhen had followed suit and drawn the symbols. She smiled and squinted her eyes. She knew that he had figured out the trick. She said, "A few days ago, you told me that Feng Yi complained that Meng Tong of the Golden Scale Academy was tormented by the Daoist dynasty's rhyming book?" Feng Zhen vaguely guessed something. He secretly clenched his fists and suppressed the surging emotions in his heart. "It's true. So I went back and found a copy of the Daoist dynasty's rhyming book. After studying it carefully, I discovered a big secret." Jiang Pengji smiled and squinted her eyes. She suddenly asked an irrelevant question. "You also know about the symbols that Mr. Cheng Cheng researched, right?" Feng Zhen said, "Of course I know." Because of the symbols, the celebrities gathered in Wanzhou were in a heated argument. Everyone had their own opinions on the matter of the symbols. The scene was like charade. Jiang Pengji said, "I was inspired by this. I was thinking, can I also use different symbols to represent different pronunciations?" In her world, there was such a thing as pinyin. The symbols used were completely different from what the audience in the live broadcast room knew. Jiang Pengji didn't use the symbols given by the audience. Instead, she chose the interstellar language that she was familiar with. The Daoist dynasty's rhyming book is indeed good, but the threshold is too high. The mechanism is also complicated. It's extremely difficult for ordinary people to get started. If we use these symbols to mark the pronunciations, it'll be much easier. Children only need to remember a few dozen symbols to be able to practice pinyin. Feng Zhen had a guess in his heart, but when he got Jiang Pingji's confirmation, he still couldn't believe his ears. The obviously complicated De Xia dynasty's rhyming book could be simplified to this extent? Really, any word can be spelled out? Won't you know if you try? Feng Zhen didn't believe it. He randomly took out 2 books, picked a few dozen words, and compared them with the symbols he'd sorted out. After testing it out, it was indeed correct. He blinked his eyes in disbelief. If this simple method of phonetic transcription could be popularized on a large scale, it would save a lot of time and energy. It would also lower the threshold for people to study and give more people from poor families the hope of studying. I plan to personally go back to Wanzhou, Jiang Pingji said to Feng Zhen. Jiang Pingji said to Feng Zhen, this brand new rhyming book will be tested in the Jinlin Academy for now to see how it works. If there are no problems, I plan to popularize these phonetic symbols in my own territory. Feng Zhen spent a lot of effort to force himself to calm down. My lord, Jiang Pingji said, it's a long road to enlighten the people. The people can't read a word, but if they put their minds to it, they can memorize it in less than 3 days. When the time comes, the government will issue an order. One will be written in normal words, and the other will be marked with symbols. The people can use the phonetic symbols they've memorized to spell out the words one by one. Think about it. If that's the case, how much effort can the government save? The low literacy rate of the people indirectly affected the efficiency of the government's issuing of government orders. Because they couldn't read, they didn't know what the government had issued. Their eyes were blank, and they couldn't understand anything. If they could spell out the words themselves, they would know what was written on the notice. Even if they couldn't read the words, they could read them out. Feng Zhen felt his mouth go dry. He stared at his lord blankly. He didn't look like he was looking at his lord, but like he was looking at a god. Seeing that Feng Zhen didn't respond, Jiang Pingji threw the rhyming book of De Xia and said angrily, do you agree or not? Feng Zhen was stunned. How could he not agree to such a good thing? Besides, the lord was the lord. She was the one who made the decisions. Why was she asking him? Feng Zhen said, everything is up to you, my lord. I'm willing to be at your beck and call, even if I have to die 1,000 times. Jiang Pingji said, all right, let's agree. The affairs of Wanzhou are all in your hands. Feng Zhen heard clearly what Jiang Pingji said and broke out in a cold sweat. Jiang Pingji said, didn't I say before that I want to go back to Wanzhou? I asked you if you agreed. You said that I would make the decision. Feng Zhen looked at the government office filled with bamboo slips in a daze, then looked at his lord who was smiling brightly. My life is over. Chapter 9-10. Feng Zisher, that's your lord, not your daughter. Don't be coaxed by her sweet words and forget everything, okay? Qiguan Rang had returned from his patrol and found that his lord had disappeared without a trace. He was furious. Feng Zhen felt wrong too. How would he know that his lord was so treacherous? His lord disappeared without a trace. His heart was tired. Qiguan Rang let out a long sigh. Fortunately, the aristocratic families in Chongzhou are holding each other back and can't recover for the time being. There's no need to worry even if my lord isn't here. If Chongzhou really needed Jiang Pingji, according to his lord's personality, she wouldn't leave the mess behind and leave. Now, forget it, let her be. Other than compromise, Qiguan Rang couldn't think of a second choice. Feng Zhen sneered. Wenjing, you're talking about me. Aren't you the same? After saying that, Feng Zhen sighed in his heart and thought, it wasn't that they were being played by their lord. It was clear that they spoiled their lord too much and deliberately let her have her way. The two of them didn't know that their lord, who said she wanted to return to Wanzhou, had taken a small detour on her way back and turned to another place. It was the height of summer and the sun was shining brightly. Under the command of Wei Ci and the others, the main roads in Shangjing had been completed. The buildings in the city were also planned. Zixiao, eat some watermelon. This watermelon has been soaked in a well and is very cold. Eat some to relieve the heat so that you won't faint from the heat. Zhang Ping played the role of a nanny dutifully. He couldn't wait to serve Wei Si, the porcelain beauty. Wei Si looked up at the sound and took a plate of watermelon from Zhang Ping. The skin was peeled off and the flesh was cut into evenly sized pieces. It was placed on the plate. It was bright red and looked very appetizing. Wei Si laughed. How can I be so weak? You, on the other hand, are paying less and less attention to your appearance. Look at Zhang Ping's attire. He was dressed in coarse linen clothes and his long hair was wrapped in a cloth. He also had a wet face cloth on his head to block the sun. Why else would they say that Zixiao is an immortal who descended from the heavens and we are mere mortals made of mud? Xiao Guang was panting heavily. His clothes were drenched in sweat again and again. The skin that was exposed was tanned to a dark brown color. He laughed and teased Wei Si. Zixiao, look at Shiheng and then look at Guang, one is darker than the other. On the other hand, your skin is still as white as snow. I am very jealous when I see it. Xiao Guang had only joined Wanzhou later, but he, Wei Si, and Zhang Ping had lived and eaten together at the construction site in Shangjing for a year, so they naturally had a deep bond. Wei Si smiled. His skin glowed faintly under the sunlight. He was as pure as a celestial being. What's there to be jealous of? In Si's opinion, he's at a great disadvantage. Wei Si joked, I spend a lot of time under the scorching sun every day, but my skin never gets tanned. Those who don't know what's going on might think that I'm slacking off and trying to fish in troubled waters. Wei Si and Xiao Guang were chatting and laughing when the messenger rushed over in a hurry. Wei Si furrowed his brows. What happened? The messenger replied, reporting to the three sirs, the Lord is outside the camp. What? The three of them widened their eyes in astonishment. Wei Si, who had not sweated before, could not help but break out in fine, hot sweat on his forehead. Quickly go and welcome the Lord. Jiang Pingji's arrival was too sudden. The three of them had not received any news at all. After a flurry of activity, Wei Si and the others finally saw Jiang Pingji. They bowed respectfully. Greetings, my lord. No need to be so polite. I was just about to rush back to Wanzhou from Chongzhou, so I stopped by to see you. Jiang Pingji dismounted from the horse and took off the bamboo hat on her head to block the sun. She stood in front of the three of them and let out a long sigh. Zixiao has tanned. Shiheng and Chongming have also lost a lot of weight. Zhang Ping and Xiao Guang were speechless. It's not hard at all. It's my duty to share the Lord's worries and burdens. The three of them bowed again, but they could not help but complain in their hearts. They said that Wei Si had tanned. Are you sure there's nothing wrong with his eyes, my lord? Jiang Pingji had rushed back to Wanzhou for important matters. She made a small detour to Shangjing, so she did not stay for long. The night was cool. Jiang Pingji went to Wei Si's door and knocked lightly. My lord? Wei Si was dressed in pajamas and had a light cloak draped over his shoulders. What brings you here so late at night? Jiang Pingji entered in a flash and said with a smile, Zixiao, did you receive the letter I sent you? Wei Si's hand trembled and his heart skipped a beat. He had the urge to break into a run and run out of the house. I received it. His heart was flustered and his mind was in a mess. His cheeks were flushed. It's good that you received it. Jiang Pingji sat down as if there was no one else around. She smiled and asked him, Zixiao, do you have anything to say to me? It was dark in the house. Wei Si could barely see the outline of a ball. He did not say a word and prepared to light the lamp. Zixiao, come here. There's no need to light the lamp. Wei Si could only retract his foot that had taken half a step and turn to sit near her. As soon as he sat down, his right hand was held by a warm and slender hand. The heat seemed to rush through his skin straight to his heart. Zixiao, I missed you. Jiang Pingji repeated the contents of the previous letter and asked again. Don't you have anything to say to me? It was too dark in the house. Wei Si struggled to open his eyes wide, as if he wanted to see her expression clearly. After a while, his lips moved and he spat out a few words. My lord, why do you have to do this? He gave up the idea of withdrawing his hand. Competing with the person in front of him with strength was simply asking for trouble. Jiang Pengji said with a smile, "Zixiao, why do you have to do this? There's nothing wrong with being honest." Wei Ci was about to speak when a figure rushed into his arms. Before he could react, he had already been pushed onto the mat. At this moment, his heartbeat showed signs of breaking through the limit. "Don't move. Let me lean on you." Her voice was a little weak. He rarely heard it. Even during the most dangerous times in his previous life, Her Majesty was so stubborn that she refused to give in. Those who provoked her would be killed. Those who blocked her would be slaughtered. Wei Ci was in a daze. 2 arms wrapped around his neck. He was so scared that he did not dare to move. How did this look like weakness? Suddenly, 4 words popped up in his mind, showing weakness to the enemy. After a while, Wei Ci listened to the person on top of him speak. "I have a frog that I really, really like. Unfortunately, I can't bear to put a lid on it. I'll keep it for the time being." Wei Ci was dumbfounded. After a while, Jiang Pengji still had no intention of getting up. "My lord, this is improper." Jiang Pengji said, "What are you worried about, Zixiao?" Wei Ci fell into silence. He said, "My lord is a smart person. How can you not understand?" No matter what, he just didn't want to become a stain and weakness for her again. The experience of his previous life was just a dream. Jiang Pengji was a little sullen. "At the end of the day, Zixiao just doesn't believe me." She simply got up. Wei Ci felt empty instead. "My lord, what did you call me?" Wei Ci choked. Jiang Pengji burst into laughter. She did not want to really scare Wei Ci. "If I had a female name, what do you think I should be called?" Wei Ci was speechless. He was not scared, but he was scared silly. He was sure that his disguise had been exposed by his lord. "Zixiao, trust me this once." Wei Ci was flustered. "That, Jiang Pengji, can't protect you, but I will never make the same mistake." She thought about it and felt that it was better to put a lid on the frog and suffocate it. Chapter 9:11. My lord, Wei Ci was supposed to be conflicted and in pain, but he had to admit that at that moment his heart was jumping with joy. "Do you believe me?" Jiang Pengji raised her hand to pinch his chin, straightened his face, and looked him in the eye. Wei Ci laughed bitterly and said, "My lord, you still don't understand. Other than you, there is no one else in the world who can make me believe so." Jiang Pengji was startled. It was her turn to jump with joy. However, Wei Ci was an ostrich. How could he let her be happy? He immediately added, "Because of this, can I ask you for a favor?" Jiang Pengji said without thinking, "I refuse." Wei Ci was forced into a corner by her. "My lord, why don't you listen to what it is? When it comes out of your mouth, pleasant words can make me jump for joy, and unpleasant words can make me feel annoyed and depressed. It's a 50-50 ratio. You said something that made me jump with joy just now, and the next sentence will definitely not be good. Rather than listening to it, it's better not to listen." Wei Ci was convinced. When was Her Majesty so willful in her previous life? Wei Ci said, "I have to say it even if you don't want to listen. My lord, do you know what I want?" Jiang Pengji said, "Your mind is too sensitive and deep. I dare not guarantee that I know everything, but I am sure that I can give you what you want." Wei Ci's face was bitter. He said, "I want the world to be peaceful. You can indeed give it to me." In the depths of his heart, there was a small voice saying, "But why did he want the person in front of him?" This was probably the most daring idea Wei Ci had ever had in his life. As long as he still had a trace of rationality, he would not let this terrible idea have a chance to see the light of day again. Jiang Pengji asked with a smile, "The world to be peaceful and the people to live and work in peace? This has always been what you want to achieve, and it is what I hope to achieve. However, other than these, do you have no other selfish motives? For example, do you want the person in front of you? Who cares? I'll cook this frog and eat it first. Jump all you want. If you have the guts, try jumping again." After hearing this, Wei Ci felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His whole body stiffened and he did not dare to move. It wasn't just that the other party had exposed his most obscure and filthy thoughts, but also, Wei Ci realized that something was wrong and subconsciously held Jiang Pingji's right hand with both of his hands. This person was supporting himself with his left hand while his right hand reached for the belt around his waist. Unexpectedly, the other party didn't use much strength, and he easily stopped her. Wei Ci spoke abruptly. "Not now." As soon as he said it, he regretted it and wanted to bite off his tongue. A direct rejection was better than these 5 words. "Not now? When would that be?" He could have rejected her decisively, but now he was left with a blank space that made one's imagination roam. After hearing that, Jiang Pingji's mood suddenly improved. She smiled and leaned close to Wei Ci's neck to whisper, "Forget it. It's rare for Xiao to take the initiative, so I'm satisfied." She grabbed his left hand with her right hand and lay down beside him. Wei Ci swallowed nervously. His Adam's apple squirmed a few times. He tried to struggle a little, but the other party refused to let go of his hand. "Master, you can't sleep here. If others were to find out, even if the 2 of them were innocent, they would not be able to extricate themselves. Those who are innocent will be innocent. Those who are impure will be impure. I'm not afraid." "What are you afraid of?" Jiang Pingji opened her eyes and said inexplicably, "I'll wait for you for another 10 years at most." Wei Ci was startled and seemed to understand something. He said sadly, "Master, you don't have to wait." "Now," Jiang Pingji tilted her head. With a teasing look in her eyes, she added, "Are you sure I don't have to wait? You were resisting in all kinds of ways just now, but now you can't wait anymore. What I want to say is, after 10 years, if you still have a reluctant attitude, I really can't help but eat you up. Do you know what kind of eating it is, Xiao?" Wei Ci was speechless. When it came to acting like a hooligan, even if there were 10 of him, he might not be a match for Jiang Pingji. "Why is my lord so obsessed with me?" Wei Ci could not help but ask a narcissistic question. Was it because he was good-looking? Jiang Pingji said, "Xiao just said that there is no one else in the world who can make you believe in me so much. Then I also want to say that there is no one else in the world who can make me feel so compatible with you. I have very high requirements. I either don't want anyone, or I want the best and most suitable person. I think you are that person." The room was pitch black and the surroundings were quiet. Wei Ci had never been so excited before. His heart seemed to want to jump out of his throat. He was an adult in both his previous and current lives, but now he felt the nervousness of a young man who had his first awakening of love. All these emotions kept him together. The knot in his heart that had perplexed him in his previous life was solved with Jiang Pingji's words. "What the hell? My lord, you should prioritize the great cause. When my lord reaches the end, you may realize that Wei Ci is just an ordinary man." Wei Ci's voice was a little perturbed. Jiang Pingji secretly rolled her eyes. Wei Ci must be doing this on purpose. He could not see her happy, so he always said things that made her annoyed and angry. If my lord still doesn't change your mind by then, see who will let you be." After he finished speaking, Wei Ci lay straight on the ground like a dead fish. His ears were so red that they could drip blood. If there was a crack on the ground, he really wanted to crawl into it and hide. Jiang Pingji had a look of disbelief. Did she just trigger a hidden plot? "But before that, my lord, you should still be careful between men and women." Wei Ci's last sentence dampened her spirits. She pouted and did not care what Wei Ci said. After today, she did not know when they would meet again. Was she not allowed to see more? After a while, Wei Ci asked her softly, "My lord, do you have any plans for the next 2 years?" After a while, Wei Ci asked her softly, "My lord, do you have any plans for the next 2 years?" "I'm afraid that after 2 years, the situation will change drastically." There were too many changes in the past and present lives, but Wei Ci knew the capabilities of the feudal lords. His lord's recuperation for 2 years meant that she could not intervene in the war. She could only stay in the north, which gave the feudal lords a chance to develop their power. He said, "The Su brothers come from famous families and are all ambitious. Shi County has abundant provisions and has a geographical advantage. They can rely on this place to gather talents and have a bright future. Yang Jian's son Yang Tao. He alone is not a threat, but Yan Lin by his side is not easy to deal with. With Yan Lin's assistance, Yang Tao may be able to take over the false emperor's foundation. His future is limitless. And that Huang Song, my lord, you are brothers with him, but... Before Wei Ci could finish, Jiang Pingji sneered and said, sharpening the knife will not delay the work of cutting firewood. What are we afraid of? After we take care of the northern borderline, we'll deal with them later. Not to mention 2 years, even if it's 20 years, we'll still beat them until they cry for their parents. Jiang Pingji's power was concentrated in the north, and the surrounding areas were all difficult to deal with. After she took care of the northern borderline, it would be a critical moment when her vitality was greatly weakened. It was very likely that a few of her neighbors would join forces to target her. But would she be afraid of that? Chapter 9:12. Let's not talk about these disappointing things, and don't think about changing the topic. Jiang Pingji yawned tiredly. She turned around and hugged Wei Ci as a large pillow to sleep. Wei Ci stiffened at first, and the muscles all over his body tightened. After a while, he asked, "Is the Lord asleep?" He had lived with Jiang Pingji for half of his life, so he knew how bad her sleep was. Even if someone tiptoed beside her, it would wake her up, let alone a slightly loud noise. Jiang Pingji closed her eyes and muttered, "I'm already asleep. Do you have the heart to disturb my sweet dreams?" Yes. The Lord is asleep. Wei Ci smiled bitterly. "The floor is cold. Forgive me for offending you. Let me carry you to the bed." The floor was made of solid wood. Not only was it hard, but it was also cold. It was not comfortable to lie on. Jiang Pingji's ears perked up when she heard that. She opened her arms enthusiastically. "Come on. If Zixiao can't carry you, I can carry you." Wei Ci said, "Since the Lord is asleep, don't talk in your sleep." Jiang Pingji pouted. She doubted whether Wei Ci could carry her. Although she was slender, she was tall and muscular. Her actual weight was heavier than that of an ordinary adult man. Jiang Pingji did not have much hope that Wei Ci would be able to carry her. It turned out that she had underestimated him. Wei Ci heard Jiang Pingji laugh softly. As intelligent as he was, he naturally knew what she was laughing at. He could not help but blush. Although he had carried Jiang Pingji, it was actually quite strenuous for him. His breathing was a little breathless. It was only a few steps from where he stood to the bed, but Wei Ci was so tired that a thin layer of sweat appeared on his forehead. Zixiao's arm strength still needs to be trained. Jiang Pingji rolled into the bed and clamped a corner of the thin blanket with her toes. She casually flung it and rolled her body in a circle. The spread-out thin blanket covered half of her body. Otherwise, it's easy to run out of stamina in the future. In the darkness, Wei Ci's eyes carried some helplessness. He was not a virgin. Of course, he could understand the meaning behind her words. Knowing Jiang Pingji's temperament, Wei Ci did not dare to simply respond to her, in case she pushed her luck. Jiang Pingji accurately stopped Wei Ci from taking another thin blanket and teased him with a smile. "Sleep in the same bed. Summer's Zixiao is very likable." Wei Ci replied, "In that case, my lord disdains me during winter?" "No," Jiang Pingji said, "my lord in winter is very likable to Zixiao." Wei Ci was stunned for a while before he understood what she meant. He was so embarrassed that he could not speak. His heart was burning with anger, and his tone carried a hint of annoyance. Who likes it? In the previous life, Her Majesty was so cold and serious. Why was she so glib in this life? He carefully lay down on the edge of the bed. His neck suddenly tightened, and Jiang Pingji forcefully pulled him in. Wei Ci had no choice but to accept his fate. In the end, he could not escape the fate of being used as a pillow in summer. In the previous life, Her Majesty at least knew how to restrain herself, but in this life, she was becoming more and more lawless. "I like it," Jiang Pingji said. Wei Ci had no choice but to lie flat. "Forget it. How many times can I be harassed in a year? Today, I'll let her be." Wei Ci's guess was right. Jiang Pingji came here secretly and could only stay for 2 or 3 days. On the second day, she ran away without a trace. She either brought Xiao Guang or Zhang Ping with her. They stared at the scorching sun and carefully inspected the construction progress everywhere. Other than at night, they could not see her at all. After 3 days, it was time for Jiang Pingji to set off for Wanzhou. People often say that what you think about in the day, you dream about at night. Zixiao, you have to think about me more. This is an order. Jiang Pingji whispered in his ear. Wei Ci did not know if it was because the sun was too bright outside or because he was too nervous, but he felt his whole body breaking out in hot sweat. I have to share my lord's worries and burdens. I have no time to think too much. Jiang Pingji was exasperated, but due to the presence of others, she could not do much. Just you wait, don't cry when the time comes. Wei Ci was fearless. At least for the next 10 years, he would be safe. Farewell, my lord. He bowed with his hands clasped in front of him. Jiang Pingji was so angry that she laughed. She said to Zhang Ping and Xiao Guang, Shiheng, Chongming, I forgot to tell Zixiao something. Zhang Ping and Xiao Guang thought that the two of them were going to talk business, so they tactfully retreated. Jiang Pingji grinned, revealing a few white teeth. Wei Ci's heart sank. He had a bad premonition. After sending Jiang Pingji away, Zhang Ping and Xiao Guang realized that Wei Ci's mood was a little off. They thought that the business Jiang Pingji and Wei Ci were going to discuss was very serious, so they were a little worried. In fact, Wei Ci had not recovered from his shock. The skin on his collarbone rubbed against his clothes, causing a slight and dense pain. It's nothing. Wei Ci comforted the two of them with a normal expression. On the other side, Jiang Pingji, who was already on her way, had a licorice in her mouth. The bullet screen of the live stream was already exploding. Feisha Shursan, streamer, you didn't keep your word. Didn't you say that this live stream is very serious? Why did you steal my idol? Gujio Daijun, I'm so angry. It's rare to have a male idol that I fell in love with at first sight, but in the end, he was bitten by the streamer. Iji Wuxia Haitang, my heart is broken. Didn't they say that the streamer is very serious and won't make fun of him? The above were the wails of the audience in the blue bullet screen. Although the Red Army had an absolute advantage, the endless stream of handsome male idols still attracted a portion of the blue audience. Among the many male idols, Wei Ci's looks were the most outstanding. Because he had appeared on the live stream a few times, he was the most valuable. Jiang Pingji had boldly grabbed Wei Ci's collar and bit his collarbone. This action broke the hearts of the blue audience. What was even more heartbreaking was that they did not know if Jiang Pingji did it on purpose. Not only did she grab Wei Ci's collar, but she also blocked their view. She definitely did it on purpose, right? Compared to the wails of the blue audience, the red audience was laughing and making noise. Lao Ciji Lianmeng, hey, 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 our little pig finally knows how to kiss cabbages. Father is so happy. To defeat Xiu, it's not easy. I've been following the live stream for almost 7 years. My daughter's first kiss has finally been given out. Mo Lingin, bah, what kind of first kiss is this? I've been looking forward to the streamer cooking this frog, Beauty Ci. The streamer hesitated and refused to bite him. May I ask, who would boil hot water for several years? If you want to bite him, then bite him. What kind of hero is blocking the camera? They only saw Jiang Pingji take a bite of Wei Ci, but they did not see any extra skin on him. How infuriating! Iji Sibao, you don't understand. This is called possessiveness. If I had a boyfriend like Beauty Ci, I would be petty too. Mingshi Yaya, if I had a boyfriend like Beauty Ci, I would have knocked him out and dragged him to bed to make him cry. Jiang Pingji looked at the bullet screen and smiled without saying a word. Chapter 9:13. Jiang Pingji's return to Wanzhou was a spur-of-the-moment idea, so she didn't inform the people in Wanzhou. When Su Ke saw Jiang Pingji standing in front of him, he was so scared that he almost dropped the document in his hand. Su Ke was shocked. Why did my lord suddenly return from Chongzhou? Jiang Pingji laughed as she took off her bamboo hat to block the sun. She said, "Time was tight, so I had to come by myself." Su Ku was speechless. "Even so, my lord shouldn't have traveled alone. If anything happened on the way." Jiang Pingji replied with a smile, "I'm afraid the person who can beat your lord hasn't been born yet. I have to come by myself for what I have to do. No one else can replace me." On the way back, I went to Shangjing to see Zixiao and the others. The construction of the provincial government is going smoothly. Su Ku was helpless. He wanted to say something more, but seeing her forehead covered in hot sweat, he could only get up and make tea for her to cool down. Jiang Pengji took the tea and asked casually, "By the way, has Xiao Yu written to Xuanmei recently?" Su Ku's face showed some warmth, but there was still some guilt in his eyes. He said, "He writes once a month. She's doing well in Hejian." Since the wedding, he and Xuanmei had been living in separate places all year round. How could sending letters be enough? He missed her very much. Fortunately, he had enough work to do. He didn't have much time to think about it. Jiang Pingji thought about it and said, "Find a time to send someone to bring Xuanmei and your aunt to Wanzhou." Su Ke looked surprised. After a while, he said in a low voice, "But the person behind Taksha hasn't." Xuanmei was placed in Hejian so that she could avoid Takshu. Su Ke knew about this. Coincidentally, Hejian County was far away from the chaos of war and the situation in Wanzhou was unsettled, so he was at ease to let his new wife stay in her hometown. Later, the situation in Wanzhou stabilized, but Takshu had never been resolved. He was worried that bringing Xuanmei over would harm her. If it weren't for these concerns, he would have brought Xuanmei and his aunt over when Qiguan Rang brought his wife and daughter to Wanzhou. "I've already thought about how to deal with Takshu." Jiang Pingji took a sip of tea, and her expression became a little indifferent. "Takshu is not the key. I can't let you be alone forever. Being married is better than being unmarried, right? No matter what, you're a man. It's not good if you don't have a wife by your side. I understand men very well. I'm afraid that you can't bear the loneliness and will look for a new lover, which will disappoint Xuanmei's sincerity. What hurts the most to a new driver? Even though he had gotten a driver's license, he still had to walk to work. He felt like he had gotten a fake driving license." Jiang Pengji's eyes became dishonest, and Su Ku was so angry that he wanted to hit her. "My lord knows a lot," he said sarcastically. Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows. "That's true. No matter what, your lord is an old customer who roams the brothels." When it came to bickering, Su Ku was no match for Jiang Pengji. "Why did my lord suddenly think of this?" Jiang Pengji said, "Can't you be considerate to your subordinates?" The truth was that Hui Jun had been pregnant for 10 months and gave birth to a son and a daughter. She counted the next generation of the members of the team with her fingers. Before he went to Chongzhou to take office, Shangguan Wan was pregnant. Qiguan Rang had a daughter. Feng Jin yearned for a second child. Feng Zhen's Fengyi seemed to have a genetic mutation. Yang Saifenglia did not want to get married. Xiao Guang already had a family. Zhang Ping was an unmarried member of the Keting clan. Meng Hun had no intention of remarrying. Jiang Nongqin wholeheartedly cared for Jiang Pingji and did not consider marriage. When she counted to Su Ku, she suddenly thought of the young couple who lived in different places. She had already found out who the mastermind was. There was no point in keeping Takshu. In order not to fall out with the mastermind, Jiang Pingji did not plan to do anything to Takshu at the moment. She planned to find an excuse to send Takshu away from her. After Su Ke heard this, he secretly rolled his eyes. Who would believe this reason? Right, I came back this time for the Golden Scale book? Su Ku raised his eyebrows. Golden Scale Academy? What's wrong with it? Jiang Pingji said, "A while ago, Feng Zhen's son wrote a letter to his father, complaining about the Xia Yunshu." Su Ke laughed. Fengyi is extremely talented, intelligent, and eager to learn. Master Cheng and Master Yuanjing praised him. He started learning early, so the Xia Yunshu should be nothing to him. Why did my lord rush back from so far away for this? Fengyi is fine, but the other children do not have a foundation, so they are stumbling in their studies. Even with the guidance of a famous teacher, their learning progress is still slow. The phonetic transcription of the Xia Yunshu, regardless of whether it was direct or indirect, required the learner to have a certain literacy foundation. Apart from Fengyi, the other students of the Golden Scale Academy were all orphans of martyrs who had died in battle. Even martyrs were illiterate, let alone their children. Literacy is difficult, so is reading. My lord is kind enough to provide them with learning conditions for free. This is already a blessing to our ancestors. Su sighed. Every student goes through this. If they do not learn well, they can only blame themselves for not working hard enough. They could only learn by rote. If they could not, it could only be said that the students did not work hard enough. That may not be the case, Jiang Pingji said. Xiaoyu, invite the teachers here. I have something to discuss with them. Although he did not know what it was, Su did not dare to delay and quickly did as he was told. During the time that Jiang Pingji was not around, the teaching material compilation team expanded again. Apart from the three big names, Cheng Cheng, Yuan Jing and Feng Ren, there were 4 knowledgeable scholars. It was worth mentioning that these 4 people were fans of Yuan Jing and Feng Ren. In order to chase after their stars, they came all the way to Wanzhou. Now they were preparing to buy a house and settle down there. For fans, there was nothing happier than working hard with their idols. The peaceful and prosperous atmosphere of Wanzhou was also one of the factors that attracted them. Feng Ren was only an external aide, so the way he addressed Jiang Pingji was very formal. May I know why Magistrate Liuzhou has summoned us? Cheng Cheng and Yuan Jing were also suspicious. Didn't Jiang Pingji go to Chongzhou? Why did she suddenly come back? Of course it's an important matter. She took out the brand new Xia Yun Shu that she had organized and handed it to them. The few people present were all big shots. Jiang Pingji did not need to waste time explaining. This is phonetic transcription? Master Yuanjing's hand trembled. He almost dropped the precious Xia Yun Shu on the ground. The other 2 people were ready to take it. The 3 of them looked very funny. Don't be fooled by their strange appearance. If they are used for phonetic transcription, it is much simpler than the current straight transcription or reverse transcription, Jiang Pingji said. The biggest advantage is that, first, they are few in number and easy to remember. Second, children who are enlightened don't need to memorize hundreds of words before learning new words. It greatly reduces time and energy. The efficiency of enlightenment will naturally increase. Xia Yun Shu was considered a pioneering work in this era, but for Jiang Pingji, it was too complicated and prone to mistakes. Chapter 9:14. Master Yuan Jing was an expert in the field of education. How could he not see the infinite potential hidden behind the Xia rhyming book? It was a terrifying beast. No one knew if it would promote the development of the whole civilization or devour all of them. Lanting, tell me how to pronounce these rhymes. Master Yuan Jing already had a plan in mind, but he still couldn't believe it. He had to hear Jiang Pingji pronounce it with his own ears. After all, a few words alone could not prove anything. He needed more powerful evidence. Obviously, the Xia rhyming book that Jiang Pingji gave him was much simpler than the original direct pronunciation or reverse transcription. It was so simple that it was shocking. If the pronunciation of all the words could be spelled out with just a few rhymes, wouldn't it mean that everyone in the world had the possibility of learning? Just thinking about that scene made Yuan Jing feel that his chest, which had been silent for a long time, began to heat up and his blood began to boil. Jiang Pingji didn't deliberately keep them in suspense. Instead, she taught them everything she knew. She taught them for 4 hours. It wasn't that Master Yuan Jing and the others didn't have the ability to learn. They learned while learning, and it turned into another seminar. When they learned all the pinyin method that Jiang Pingji taught them, they came up with a brand new enlightenment plan. With the more convenient and efficient pinyin transcription, of course, they had to give up the complicated Xia rhyming book. These scribbles look weird, but it's very easy to learn. Feng Ren laughed and said, if only I was born a few decades later. In order to learn the Xia rhyming book, I memorized it day and night. It was very hard. Jiang Pingji said, that won't do. If Master Feng was born a few decades later, who would I find to be a good right-hand man like Huayu? It's not too late now. Changxing will enter school in 2 years. Changxing will suffer for you what you didn't enjoy. Fengren laughed. He was amused by Jiang Pingji's thoughtful and playful words. He thought of his chubby granddaughter and his heart softened. He said, "That lass, Changxing, looks like a lively and active person. With the brand new method of transcription, it'll be easy for her to learn. Otherwise, that lass would definitely get impatient from studying and quit. As a noble daughter of the Feng clan, if she didn't know how to read, wouldn't it be shameful? Governor Lu's initiative has indeed helped us a lot." Master Yuanjing seemed to be deep in thought. "Governor Lu, are you planning to popularize this pinyin annotation method? Or is it just a trial in the Golden Scale Academy?" He could imagine how many people would be able to read if the pinyin annotation could really be popularized. If this situation continued for 3 to 5 generations, what would the situation be like then? It would no longer be a fantasy to break the monopoly of the landowning households. That would be incredible. I spent so much effort to come up with the pinyin annotation for the sake of the children who have difficulty in enlightenment. To others, it might be a rare treasure, but to me, it might not be the case. I won't keep it to myself. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "Currently, I want to try it out in the Golden Scale Academy for a period of time. During this period of time, I'll have to trouble you to completely perfect it. In another half a year, the children's foundations would be solid. At that time, I plan to open the Golden Scale Pavilion and allow students to borrow some basic books from the Golden Scale Pavilion." Cheng Cheng was surprised and said, "But the Golden Scale Pavilion. Most of the people who were qualified to enter the Golden Scale Pavilion were adult men. How could a group of children sneak in?" Halfway through his sentence, he suddenly understood something. The worry on his face turned into joy. If a group of children sneaked in, the adult scholars would naturally be curious and ask questions. When the time came, the children would show their skills. They would definitely be able to scare people. The Lord wanted to make use of the scholars' mouths to advertise for the Golden Scale Academy for free. As long as outsiders saw results from this group of children, there would be much less resistance to popularizing the pinyin annotation. Jiang Pingji smiled and said nothing. Master Yuanjing asked, "What name have you thought of?" Jiang Pingji cast a suspicious look at him. "What name?" "You came up with this pinyin annotation method. Naturally, you should give it a name." It was a good thing to leave a name in history. Many people were envious of it but could not come. Jiang Pingji was speechless. She was not good at giving names, but someone liked to let her do it. "Why don't we just call it Xan Yun?" Master Yuanjing glanced sideways and asked her with his eyes. Was there really no need to add a surname or something in front of Xan Yun? This was a good opportunity to leave a name in history. It was not a cabbage on the street. If she missed this opportunity, there would be no more. Jiang Pingji thought about it. She saw the contents of the bullet screen in the streaming room and immediately changed her mind. "Let's just call it Xian Yun of Chinese." Master Yuanjing looked away and nodded. "Very good." With Master Yuanjing and the others around, Jiang Pingji was not worried about the Golden Scale Academy. Master Yuanjing and the others were full of fighting spirit. They were thinking about how to show off their skills. Jiang Pingji took the opportunity to sneak away. "Oh hey, streamer, you're such a hands-off boss. Why didn't your group of little princesses fall out with you?" "Funny tree you and I. The little princesses are no match for the streamer. Their combat power is not in the same dimension." "Givenchy little sheepskin, where are you going, streamer?" Jiang Pingji asked the maid to bring some water to wipe her cheeks, neck, and arms. "Host V, I'm going to see Hui Jun and her baby." When Jiang Pingji saw Hui Jun, she was sitting in the corridor reading a book. There was a wooden pram beside her. Hui Jun heard the noise and looked in the direction of the sound. Her peaceful eyes gradually lit up. "Why you back, Lang Jun?" Jiang Pingji said, "I'm back to handle official business. I heard that women need to take care of themselves after giving birth. Why are you outside?" "I've given birth for 3 or 4 months. My body is recovering well. I don't have so many taboos." Hui Jun smiled faintly and pushed the pram into the house. The 2 fair and tender babies were sleeping soundly. They were not awakened at all. She said, "The sun in the courtyard is strong. Langjun, don't stay outside." "Which one is the younger sister?" Jiang Pingji asked as she lifted the diapers of the two babies. Both of the children were as fair as jade. Their chubby cheeks were pinkish, and their white cheeks were pinkish. In comparison, the girl was slightly smaller than the boy. Her facial features were more delicate. "This is the younger sister. When she was just born, she was as small as a kitten. Her cries were also delicate. I almost thought I couldn't raise her." Jiang Pingji tried to pinch the girl's face. The little girl's head tilted slightly. She opened her mouth and blew a bubble. The audience in the streaming room had been charmed by the two babies. They turned into weird uncles and aunties. They kept howling. "Have you named them?" "Not yet. I'm waiting for you to give them names." Hui Jun smiled. Chapter 9:15. No matter what Hui Jun said, Jiang Pingji was still merciful and did not take charge of the naming. She took out a small bag of bamboo slips from her sleeve. "Take a look and see which name you like." Hui Jun took it with a smile. "Did Langjun make it?" Jiang Pingji denied. "No, he asked me to bring it over." When Hui Jun heard that it was a gift from Fu Wang, the smile on her face faded a little, but her hands did not stop moving. He untied the string of the bag and took out a few bamboo slips with a few names written on them. After looking at it carefully, Hui Jun put it aside and said with slight embarrassment, "Is there a need for him to name the child?" He caressed the bamboo piece with his fingers. The small bamboo piece was filled with densely packed words. Just by looking at the handwriting, it was extremely difficult to associate the owner of the words with Fu Wang. "I won't ask too much about your relationship with Zhengtu. It's fine as long as you're happy. If you think raising a child is too stressful, don't hold it in. After all, the other half of the child's bloodline was given to him by Fu Zhengtu, so it was only right and proper for him to pay for the child's upbringing. If they really don't treat them well, I'll take them in as my godsons and goddaughters. No one in this world will dare to bully them then." Hui Jun giggled. "Since that's the case, Langjun should let the child call you godmother as soon as possible. You're getting more and more fond of taking things out of context. When I clearly said that the main plan isn't good for both of them, you ignored this premise." Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows and said, "That wild wolf has his eyes on you every day. If I snatch his wife and children, I'm afraid he'll go on strike." Although Fu Wang didn't say anything, he was still on guard against her. It wasn't because she was disloyal, it was because Huijuan's letters were always addressed to Jiang Pingji. The wild wolf was both envious and resentful. The way it looked at Jiang Pingji was strange. It was supposed to be a majestic wolf, but now it looked like a sad and pitiful husky. "How dare he?" Hui Jun frowned. Just as he finished speaking, the baby boy who was lying in the stroller let out two moans, and there was a faint sound of air being let out. Jiang Pingji said, "It's time to change his diaper." Hui Jun looked at Jiang Pingji in astonishment. She raised her hand and touched the boy's butt. Indeed, she felt a warm and soft lump. He's so young, but his ability to torment people is like his father." Hui Jun mumbled and took out a clean diaper from the basket under the stroller. She did not avoid arousing suspicion and skillfully changed her boy's diaper in front of Jiang Pingji. Although she said that she didn't like it, there was a gentle light on her face that could melt a person's heart. After becoming a mother, Hui Jun was very different from before. Jiang Pingji said, "Before I left Chongzhou, Zhengde came to me to propose marriage." Hui Jun turned her head and clicked her tongue. "Is he worthy of you?" Jiang Pingji smiled and explained, "What are you thinking about? He thinks that you are similar to one. Both of you are orphans, but you are close to me and treat me as half a family. He's imitating Han Mei. If he can convince me, it won't be a problem for him to marry you again." Hui Jun wiped her son's butt and put the dirty diaper into the clothes basket. "It's not like you don't know my background. I can't even dream of living like this. How would I dare to hope for more? General Fu and I are not on the same path. I don't want to be entangled with him." Huijuan's expression was calm. She said, "I'm not belittling myself. I just like how I am now. I don't want anything else." I just hope that I can help you in the future. Jiang Pingji looked at Huijuan's face carefully. She saw that her words were from the bottom of her heart, so she did not force it. I just think, Jingtu won't be so easy to get rid of. Huijun said, why would I be afraid of him? She had used her honey trap at Jimen Pass, but Fu Jingtu had still been defeated. As she spoke, Jiang Pingji noticed that there was a bookshelf in Huijuan's room. There were many handwritten bamboo scrolls on the shelf. Huijun noticed her gaze and stood up to take a few scrolls. Lang Jun is very knowledgeable. Do you have any research on these? Jiang Pingji opened the scroll and found that it was full of Huijuan's handwriting. There were all kinds of documents about dyeing cloth, printing and dyeing, as well as all kinds of spices and rouge. Apart from that, Jiang Pingji also saw a drawing of a foot-spinning wheel. I've been in the palace of Dongqing for a few years and have seen a lot. I'm wondering if I can start a business in this area to make a living. When I was in the palace, I vaguely heard someone mention that there was a small eunuch in the palace who contributed a skill that was passed down in their family. This skill can dye many bright and beautiful fabrics. I asked a few questions and now it's coming in handy. Huijun was a strong-willed person. She did not want to rely on others too much, even if that person was Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji smiled. Although I don't have much research, all women love to look good. Rouge, cosmetics, fabrics, and jewelry always cost a lot. If you do business in this area and manage it seriously, you may be able to make a lot of money. I have high hopes for you. After saying that, she asked again, I'm looking at the spinning wheel on the scroll. Did you draw it? Huijun said, yes, I learned a thing or two from the carpenters at the wood workshop. I heard that this drawing method was taught to them by you. You're very talented. I suddenly thought of something. Huijun asked, what did you think of? The spinning wheel you drew, is it a foot spinning wheel? Yes. Most people used spinning pendants. A foot spinning wheel was not something ordinary people could come into contact with. I suddenly thought of the water wheel that Shiheng worked on previously. Zhang Ping's water wheel contributed greatly to the prosperity of agriculture in Wanzhou. It saved a lot of manpower for irrigation. Huijun could not keep up with Jiang Pingji's thoughts. She did not understand how the topic had changed from a foot spinning wheel to a water wheel. Jiang Pingji said, I'm just a little curious. If we replace manpower with water and make the foot spinning wheel work, Huijun. Langjuan's idea is really bold. Huijun had never tried to link two completely unrelated things together. However, I think this idea is feasible. Jiang Pingji came from the future. Even if she was not clear about the things of the ancient times, her vision and height were beyond the reach of ordinary people. Humans had grown step by step with the help of all kinds of external forces. If that was the case, why couldn't they use water power? The improved water wheel could draw water from the ground to a higher place, allowing the water to flow into a tank and irrigate the farmland. It could also automatically pound rice. If that was the case, why couldn't they use water power to replace manpower to spin? People would get tired, but if the water did not dry up, it could continue to work, right? After Jiang Pingji finished speaking, Huijuan's eyes showed that she was deep in thought. However, although she understood the structure of the foot spinning wheel, she did not know how to modify it. Jiang Pingji said, Shiheng's craftsmanship is not bad. Chongming studies water conservancy. If there's anything you don't understand, you can write a letter to Shangjing to ask them. If that doesn't work, the masters at the Golden Scale Academy are also knowledgeable people. Perhaps they can provide valuable advice? Chapter 9:16. Huijuan's expression showed that she was somewhat tempted, but it was unknown what she thought of, but in the end, she still retreated. This isn't too good, is it? Jiang Pingji teased the boy, whose eyes were rolling around, while her other hand pinched the girl's little foot. She was having a great time. What's not good about it? Wanzhou was far more open-minded than the outside world. Not only was there a large-scale, regular female battalion, but there were also 30% female patrols on the streets. What's wrong with Huijuan's invention? After Jiang Pingji finished speaking, the boy seemed to have seen her. His black eyes stared at her and followed her movements. Huijun stammered, I'm afraid I won't do well and ruin Longjuan's reputation. What are you afraid of? Even if the sky falls, there's someone tall to hold it up, and even if things don't work out, there's still me. It doesn't matter if you fail, but what if you succeed? Jiang Pingji pinched her feet and finally woke her up. The girl did not shy away from strangers. She stretched out her fair arms towards Jiang Pingji, begging for a hug. Jiang Pingji picked up the child. She held her neck with one hand and passed her other hand between her chubby legs. She used her palm to support her vest. This position was very comfortable for a baby. Baby girl pursed her lips and blew bubbles lazily. She stared at him without blinking. Your two children are brave. They didn't even cry when they saw me. Jiang Pingji especially liked cute children who were not afraid of her. She referred to Feng Jin's family's Chongqing for details. Hui Jun watched as Jiang Pingji teased the girl. Her perturbed heart suddenly calmed down. She even gained some courage. His temperament is just like that boorish man. He's very bold. Hui Jun pursed her lips and smiled faintly. There was relief in her eyes. Because she became a mother, she became more cautious in her thinking. She was afraid that her past would be exposed. It didn't matter to her, but she was afraid that the child would be affected. Now that she had Jiang Pingji's promise, she heaved a sigh of relief. She was no longer uneasy, but rather eager to try. If the water-powered spinning wheel was really built, how much manpower could be saved and how much help could Lang Jun be? Hui Jun began to think in the direction of water conservancy. Jiang Pingji continued to play with the two babies. Jiang Pingji stayed in Wanzhou for more than half a month. Not only did she have to check on the government affairs of the various counties in Wanzhou, but she also had to pay attention to the progress of the Golden Scale Academy in learning Pinyin. After observing them for a few days, she found that these children were exceptionally diligent in their studies. They didn't even need anyone to supervise them. They were extremely self-disciplined. Midnight epilepsy. This is the ancient version of a classroom. All the radishes look fresh and delicious. Crying rain in the cloud. Streamer, can I give you a suggestion? You should let these children attend classes at different times. Otherwise, it'll be so tiring. Li Wushuang, that's right. After all, there's a limit to a person's attention span. They're still kids, and their energy is incomparable to that of adults. Those teachers would lecture for the entire morning. Not only could the teachers not bear it, but the students were also more tired and their learning efficiency was lower. Jiang Pingji secretly watched the students in class for 2 days. The audience was forced to watch for 2 days too. After watching it on the first day, many viewers expressed that they could not take it anymore. There was no other reason for it. A single class was too long. The Jinlin Academy was basically run by Cheng Cheng and the others. Jiang Pingji did not know much about the academy. It was her first time attending a class in person. After listening for a whole morning, she found many drawbacks. She combined the suggestions of the audience and wrote a serious summary. Master Yuanjing had decades of teaching experience. He could be considered a leading figure in the field of education. However, he had a broad temperament. When Jiang Pingji suggested something to him, he listened carefully. If it was feasible, he would correct it. If it was not feasible, he would carefully discuss the pros and cons with Jiang Pingji. Not to mention anything else, just this spirit and attitude was worth learning from. Master Yuanjing listened for a while. He asked doubtfully, Magistrate Lu, do you mean to divide the classes? Jiang Pingji said, that's exactly what I mean. I observe that every class lasts at least 2 hours. Even adults feel tired, let alone a group of children. If they learn in a state of exhaustion, how much can the students learn? In my opinion, it's better to divide the classes and set a time. For example, a class lasts half an hour or a quarter of an hour. After the class, the children will be given some time to rest and adjust before the next class. The knowledge they learn in each class can be different. Knowledge teaching can be interspersed. In this way, the pressure on the teachers can be reduced, and the children won't be tired from learning. It's like you can't become fat with one bite. You have to take one step at a time to travel 10,000 miles. Master Yuanjing was stunned. He carefully considered Jiang Pingji's suggestion. The students he taught were usually above 10 years old. Most of the students in the Golden Scale Academy were between 5 and 7 years old. Hearing Jiang Pingji's words, Master Yuanjing felt that his previous education method was indeed not suitable for young children. Let me think about it. Master Yuanjing did not have the final say in the Golden Scale Academy. If he wanted to adjust the class schedule, he had to communicate with a few teachers. Watching a group of radishes reading, Jiang Pingji noticed that one of the radishes looked particularly fresh and delicious. Upon closer inspection, it was Feng Yi, the only son of Feng Zhen's family. Study hard. When you grow up, take over your father's position. Jiang Pingji called him over and took advantage of him. For example, she pinched his little face and rubbed his hair. His little face was ravaged by Jiang Pingji, but Feng Yi remained as still as a mountain. He only pursed his lips tighter. He said methodically, "I won't let you down." Jiang Pingji said, "He really doesn't look like Feng Longzi's son. He must have been blessed to have such a good boy." Feng Yi knew that Jiang Pingji was praising him. When he heard her say that his father was not good, his eyes showed disapproval. "Hey, you have a little temper." Jiang Pingji ravaged his face. She would not stop until his fair face turned red. "I don't dare." Jiang Pingji said, "My body is a little weak. A man has to be stronger. Otherwise, I won't even be able to carry the girl I like." Feng Yi frowned. It was no wonder that the magistrate of Lu Prefecture in front of him could collude with his father. Both of them spoke indecently. Weren't they afraid of teaching a bad person by saying that in front of a 7-year-old child? Jiang Pingji suddenly thought of something. She asked Feng Yi, "How are your studies?" "Not bad." Feng Yi had been in school for a few years. He was talented. The difficulty of studying in the Golden Scale Academy was too low for him. He was a top student who could even recite the Daoist rhyming book fluently. "I'll give you a task." Feng Yi was stunned for a moment. He solemnly bowed to Jiang Pingji. "Please speak, magistrate. After half a year, bring a few of the top children in the Golden Scale Academy to challenge the Golden Scale Pavilion." Feng Yi was speechless. Jiang Pingji added, "You have to attack those arrogant scholars from all aspects. Do you understand? If the sky is pierced, I'll bear it for you." Chapter 9:17. Feng Zhen, who was far away in Chongzhou, did not know that his darling had been harmed by Jiang Pingji. After settling the matters in Wanzhou, Jiang Pingji prepared to return to Chongzhou to preside over the overall situation. Wanzhou recruited many middle-level talents. These people had clean backgrounds and were not of high birth. They were hardworking and easy to manipulate. Jiang Pingji met them one by one. She praised Su Ku and Feng Jin again and gave them a bonus. As for Feng Jin's indirect questions about the break, she pretended to be deaf and dumb. The situation in Wanzhou was stable, but there was trouble in Chongzhou. The gentry clans in Chongzhou had learned their lesson after being bullied by her. But not long after she left, they returned to their old ways and wanted to cause trouble for her. "Huh, a bunch of idiots." Jiang Pingji laughed coldly. "Do these people think the coffins are not placed long enough and the corpses are not rotten enough?" Her words were vicious. If the gentry clans in Chongzhou heard them, they would definitely vomit blood in anger. Last winter, Jiang Pingji entered Chongzhou and killed several senior gentry clans in Chongzhou. She even used the military to suppress and intimidate them. She gathered one group of people to suppress another. Her clean and efficient methods scared the gentry clans so much that they did not dare to let out a fart. She even sent troops to surround their mansions, forcing them to be unable to bury their relatives' corpses in their ancestral graves. They could only stay in the mourning hall. This stop lasted until summer. The corpses had already decomposed into white bones. The stench of corpses filled the air. The gentry clans finally could not resist anymore. They gave in to Jiang Pingji and unwillingly spat out a portion of the land deeds. However, Jiang Pingji was a ruthless person. She refused to withdraw her troops even after receiving the land deeds. They had to spit out all the land they had seized from the people. After a stalemate, the gentry clans in Chongzhou could only bear with the pain and swallow their resentment. They swallowed their resentment, but the death grudge was also settled. When they buried the corpses of their relatives in their ancestral graves, Jiang Pingji ran off to Wanzhou. They had nowhere to vent their anger. However, they could not kill Jiang Pingji, but it did not mean that they could not get back at them. What were the gentry clans? They were a group that placed their personal and family interests above the interests of the country. As long as their families did not fall, the carnage outside had nothing to do with them. In order to take revenge on Jiang Pingji, a few families formed an alliance in private and planned to join forces with the north borderline to betray their teammates. Of course, this matter was exposed to Jiang Pingji, which showed how bad their confidentiality measures were. In fact, the ancients did not seem to have any sense of secrecy. In the history of the previous dynasty, how many coups were stifled because of leaks? Su Ku also saw the secret report and couldn't help but be speechless. These people are really, even if the Lord was too ruthless, wasn't the cause because they forcibly occupied the fertile land, oppressed the good people and trampled on the common people? They had done such a heinous thing, and now that their Lord had forced them to spit it out, did they still feel that they had been wronged? Not only did they suffer grievances, they even allied with the forces of the northern borderline and prepared to open an opening at the border to let the cavalry of the northern borderline break in? Fortunately, the northern border has yet to recover from the horse plague 2 years ago. Even if we send the cavalry to kill and pillage, there won't be many of them. Su Ku furrowed his brows and said, "Otherwise, wouldn't we be inviting a wolf into the house?" Those people actually dared to do such a thing. Jiang Pingji laughed coldly. She crushed the secret letter, her eyes filled with a cold, murderous intent. "I originally wanted to keep them for a while, but I didn't expect them to be tired of living and take the initiative to hand over their weaknesses. Not to mention anything else, just the fact that they had colluded with the enemy and committed treason was enough to consign them to eternal damnation." Previously, Jiang Pingji falsely accused them of colluding with the enemy and committing treason, but she didn't have concrete evidence in her hands. She could only rely on her mouth to distort the purpose of their annexation of land. Now that she had concrete evidence in her hands, she didn't believe that she couldn't kill these vermin. "Does my lord want to catch them all in one fell swoop?" Jiang Pingji said, "They are playthings that cause endless harm. It's better to squash them to death as soon as possible." According to the original plan, she wanted to deal with them before the war with the northern borderline. She didn't expect them to be even more anxious than she was, taking advantage of the time when she was not in Chongzhou to plot to take away her assets. These people were still too impatient. Jiang Pingji left Chongzhou. How could she not send people to keep an eye on them? At such a time, they should be even more cautious, tuck their tails between their legs, and not let the cat out of the bag. However, they couldn't swallow their anger and had to stir up trouble. However, they couldn't be blamed for being stupid. Jiang Pingji was really too ruthless. If they didn't take advantage of the time when Jiang Pingji was not in Chongzhou, according to the trend of her development in Chongzhou, the longer they delayed, the more powerful she would be. Their hopes of revenge would become smaller and smaller. It was a pity that they underestimated Feng Zhen and Qiguan Rang's abilities. How could the combat power of the two of them be as simple as 1 + 1? It was estimated that before Jiang Pingji reached Chongzhou, these jumping clowns would have already been caught by their inescapable net. Reality proved that Jiang Pingji's guess was not wrong. "My lord, you look radiant." Wen Zheng and I, on the other hand, have been restless for more than a month. Feng Zhen had a pair of dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he had been sucked dry by a demoness. "Why are you all acting like this?" Jiang Pingji rushed to Chongzhou without stopping. Along the way, she didn't have time to take a detour to see Wei Ci. When she reached Chongzhou, she saw that her two right-hand men looked like they hadn't slept for a long time. Wen Zheng's left arm was even tied with a white cloth. Those people are planning to fight to the death. Previously, they sent men to assassinate Wen Zheng. When the assassination failed, they instigated others to cause trouble. Fortunately, Han Mei and Wen Zheng were discussing the matter of farming and recruiting soldiers. That was how I managed to survive. When Qiguan Rang was assassinated, Jiang Pingji was still on the road, so she didn't receive the news. What? Haven't these people been arrested? Jiang Pingji glanced at Qiguan Rang. When his eyes met hers, he winked. His gaze carried a hint of meaning. She was so angry that her whole body was trembling. She thought more than Feng Zhen. Why did Qiguan Rang have to be the one who was assassinated? One had to know that Qiguan Rang's position was impartial. In comparison, Feng Zhen's hatred was greater. She was afraid that someone was trying to fish in troubled waters. Jiang Pingji snorted. Feng Zhen thought she didn't understand and explained. Although those people were arrested, my lord, the relationship between the aristocratic families in Chongzhou is very complicated. They are either relatives or friends, or they are students and former officials. Not only are they friends, but they are also bound by blood ties that cannot be severed. Previously, they could still bear with it when they only locked up people. Now it's different. Lives are at stake. How can they sit still? When Zheng's danger is just the beginning. We don't know what will happen in the future. Jiang Pingji took a deep breath. She said calmly, "You're wrong. They will betray the country for their personal and family interests and collude with the northern borderline. Of course, they will also get close to me and abandon those abandoned children for the sake of making others jealous?" Feng Zhen asked. "Then what does my lord mean?" Chapter 9:18. Feng Zhen smiled bitterly. This was indeed his lord's unique style of doing things. Killing was just a matter of nodding to the ground. The most troublesome part was dealing with the aftermath. Seeing Feng Zhen's expression, Jiang Pingji furrowed her brows and asked him, "Zi sure doesn't agree?" Feng Zhen shook his head. It wasn't that he didn't agree, he was just worried. The aristocratic families in Chongzhou weren't big, but the relationships between them were very complicated. If the Lord chose to cut them all off, it would cause more trouble. But if she didn't do anything about it, where would the Lord's dignity be? "Why don't we just kill the bandit leaders?" Feng Zhen suggested against his will. He had been with Jiang Pingji for a long time, and his preferences had changed. Compared to intricate schemes, he preferred simple and violent methods. But as a strategist, he couldn't act on impulse. He had to prioritize the Lord's interests. "There's no need. Just kill them all." Jiang Pingji's eyes shone with a cold glint. Letting a tiger return to the mountains will lead to endless trouble. In a place like Chongzhou, the temple is small, but the wind is strong. The relationships between them are complicated. If we only kill the bandit leaders, it's the same as letting them preserve their strength. As long as they are alive, they can make a comeback if they seize the opportunity. Rather than that, we might as well kill them all. If we only kill the bandit leaders, the remaining people will still cause trouble. If that's the case, we might as well uproot them and not leave any future troubles. These families are a lesson to be learned from. Punish them harshly and let others see what happens when they betray the country. Since Jiang Pingji had said so, Feng Zhen naturally wouldn't object. He narrowed his eyes slyly and his lips curled into a scheming smile. In the days when Jiang Pingji wasn't around, he had suffered many grievances. Now that he could get back at her, how could he not be happy? Feng Zhen obeyed her orders and went to make arrangements. Only Jiang Pingji and the silent Qiguan Rang were left. "Are you all right? Does your wound still hurt?" Jiang Pingji asked softly. Qiguan Rang's stiff lips twitched. He said, "This time, I really suffered an unexpected disaster." Jiang Pingji understood the meaning behind his words. She restrained the smile on her lips and resumed her cold expression. "Do you think the people who assassinated you were the aristocrats of Chongzhou or?" Jiang Pingji asked Qiguan Rang in a low voice. Qiguan Rang thought for a while, his brows furrowed, and he said in a low voice, "I'm afraid it's a borrowed knife to kill. On the surface, it's the aristocratic families of Chongzhou who have lost their minds and sent assassins. But in the dark, there's another master. That person is extremely cautious. If I didn't take precautions in advance, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to find any clues." Jiang Pingji took a deep breath and suppressed the restlessness and anger in her heart. Qiguan Rang continued, "Even so, that person did not leave behind any evidence. Rang is only suspicious. Jiang Pingji furrowed her brows. Her eyes seemed to be surging with a thick and frightening fierceness. Your Highness, you must not let your guard down. Qiguan Rang clenched the feather fan in his hand and used it to knock on the table. It made a crisp sound and interrupted Jiang Pingji's train of thought. A little impatience will spoil a great plan. Let me think that the other party doesn't really want to take my life. It's most likely a test. Jiang Pingji raised her eyes and looked at Qiguan Rang. You also think that person is testing us? What was there to test? To test whether Jiang Pingji had already discovered the other party's existence. If she was discovered, the conflict between the two would definitely surface. The other party could change his plan as soon as possible. If after the test, he discovered that Jiang Pingji was still ignorant, the other party could be at ease and continue to lurk behind the scenes. I'm at least 70% sure. Qiguan Rang waved his feather fan and lowered his eyes. Your Highness, you must be careful. Don't let the cat out of the bag. Jiang Pingji said, I will pretend that nothing happened. Let's see who can't hold back their anger first. Recently, the atmosphere in Chongzhou was treacherous. It was as if it was shrouded in a layer of low pressure that made it hard for people to breathe. When everyone received the news of Jiang Pingji's return to Chongzhou, another piece of news spread. How dare she? When they first heard that Jiang Pingji wanted to wipe out the aristocratic families of Chongzhou who participated in the rebellion, the entire aristocratic circle boiled over. They had more or less heard about the few families, but they never thought that Lu Shi would be so ruthless as to wipe out their entire families. Why wouldn't she dare? Those few idiots were arrogant. While Lu Shi was not in Chongzhou, they secretly contacted the northern borderline. Now that Dongqing is no longer a country, they only did it for their own future. There is nothing wrong with it. Of all the things he should not have done, he should not have been discovered by Lu Shi. Now that the evidence is in his hands, do you think Lu Shi will be merciful and let them go? Some were furious, while others looked on coldly from the sidelines. The former were filled with righteous indignation and felt sympathetic for the loss of their own kind. The latter were ultimately outsiders, calmly watching the situation in Chongzhou change. How can we be in cahoots with such a ruthless person who massacred the aristocratic families? Do not punish the officials, do not punish the commoners. The original meaning of this sentence should be that the scholar officials should not receive preferential treatment in sentencing, and the commoners should not be excluded from etiquette. But as the times changed, this sentence became the golden medal and privilege of the aristocratic class. Now, it was twisted to mean that the scholar officials had the privilege of not being punished, and the commoners did not have the right to be treated with courtesy. Although the aristocratic families in Chongzhou were nouveau riches in the aristocratic circle, they were still above the commoners. Jiang Pingji wanted the lives of their entire clan because of the crime of secretly contacting the northern borderline. It was unreasonable. According to their thinking, a heavy punishment would suffice. Why would there be a need to resort to violence? Based on this woman will definitely lose the hearts of the people. Sooner or later, she will die without a burial. Faced with such a statement, the clear-headed people smiled bitterly. They were very clear that as long as Lu Shi held the military power in his hands, the aristocratic families in Chongzhou would not be able to hurt her. A few scholars found Jiang Pingji together and advised her. They talked loudly, and the core meaning was that she was in the wrong. If it was a commoner who had colluded with the enemy and committed treason, they deserved to die. However, the person who had secretly contacted the northern borderline was an aristocratic family. They only needed to be taught a harsh lesson, fined, and punished. There was no need to take their lives. Dongqing had a law. The aristocratic families could use enough money to exempt them from the death penalty. Even if it was a crime like secretly contacting the northern borderline, as long as they could afford it, they could be acquitted according to the law. Jiang Pingji looked at them coldly for a long time. After an hour, "Are you all thirsty?" The scholars echoed each other. They were eloquent, but unfortunately, there was a hole in their brains. The scholars bowed to Jiang Pingji and stood proudly on the spot. They said, "Magistrate Lu, please reconsider." Jiang Pingji said coldly, Looks like you're not thirsty. That's fine. I don't want to throw you into the well in the backyard and dirty my water. Someone, throw out these fellows who have an undeserved reputation. From now on, if they dare to come to our door again, break their legs. After the scholars heard this, their faces turned ashen. Jiang Pingji narrowed her eyes dangerously. Throw them out. The scholars wanted to say something, but when they saw the guards in armor and brandishing their blades, they were as quiet as chickens, not daring to make a sound. It was at this moment that Fu Wang and Li Yun stepped in with a bloody aura. The scholars saw them and felt uneasy. Is it done? Jiang Pingji asked. Chapter 9:19. Jiang Pingji was also afraid that a long delay would bring trouble. After making up her mind, she let Fu Wang and Li Yun lead the troops to confiscate the houses and arrest the people. According to Dongqing's practice, confiscating property and exterminating 3 clans meant confiscating property. Confiscating property was easy to understand. It was nothing more than confiscating all property, including land, real estate, gold and silver, slave contracts. Exterminating 3 clans referred to the paternal, maternal, and wife clans. If Dongqing's imperial power was stable, something as big as confiscating property and exterminating a clan needed the permission of the court. However, Dongqing was now ruled by the emperor. It was good enough that one edict could affect the entire imperial city. Why would Jiang Pingji care about him? Confiscating property and exterminating a clan was something she could do. However, she did not go too far. According to Dongqing's current laws, exterminating a clan was a rule. The offenders and the men in the family would all be executed. The women could be exempted from the death penalty. However, they would be made prostitutes for the officials or sent to the army as camp prostitutes. This outcome was even more horrifying than death. Jiang Pingji would rather give them a quick death. She did not want to use such methods to humiliate a group of weak women. After thinking about it, Jiang Pingji said, "Get someone to register all these women and demote them to commoners. Send them back to their parents' homes in private." The atmosphere in Chongzhou was more open. Women would not crazily treat men as their sky, let alone follow the 3 obediences and 4 virtues. Jiang Pingji gave them a way out and did not take their lives. She only sent them back to their parents' homes. This was already a great kindness. When the limelight was over, they could still get married again. By doing so, she subtly pacified the women's families so that they could not vent their anger. The catastrophe in Chongzhou lasted for more than a month. From the top to the bottom, everyone was in danger. While the gentry in Chongzhou were anxious and fearful, the Cui family, who had long boarded Jiang Pingji's pirate ship, were happy to see their teeth but not their eyes. The head of the Cui family, Cui Yu, even chatted with his friends in private. He said that this was the most successful business he had ever done. Although they gave up the land, they reaped even more benefits. The returns were far higher than the costs. In the blink of an eye, it was the end of the first year of Qingzong. It had been a year since Jiang Pingji took over Chongzhou. In the past year, she had gone from being looked down upon to being a great demon that everyone feared. She had Chongzhou in her hands. As for Yang Si, who had been thrown to Hu County by Jiang Pingji, he was even more impressive. He took over the administrative affairs of Hu County perfectly. Of course, it would be better if he could stop complaining and focus on working overtime. There were turbulent times outside, and there were dukes fighting during the new year. Only the territory under Jiang Pingji's rule was peaceful. Well, maybe it was too peaceful, which made people envious and jealous. Over the past year, Jiang Pingji had steadily strengthened herself, and the other feudal vassal forces had not been idle either. As the end of the year approached, a secret letter was delivered to Jiang Pingji. She was so shocked that she slammed the table after reading it. Like father like son, Yang Tao has done a good job. Feng Zhen almost had a heart attack because of Jiang Pingji. Next time, could he at least give him a heads up before making a fuss so that he could be mentally prepared? Yang Tao? Isn't that the son of the late Dongmen commandant, Yang Jian? Qiguan Rang frowned slightly. Seeing Jiang Pingji's face full of admiration, he thought about the situation outside and had some guesses in his heart. During the alliance meeting at Huangshui, Qiguan Rang felt that Yang Tao was not an ordinary person. It was not surprising that he had turned into a dragon after meeting water. Fengzhen said, I remember hearing news about Yang Tao a while ago. After Yang Jian died, he turned to the false emperor. However, Yang Tao is not a man without ambition. His father, Yang Jian, had a disagreement with the false emperor. According to the false emperor's temperament, he would not treat Yang Tao kindly. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, a month ago, Yang Tao launched a coup. The false emperor retreated in defeat. Now he has fled to Nanxing. Even though they had expected it, Qiguan Rang and Fengzhen were still shocked when they heard the truth. Xianxia was the false emperor's territory. Yang Tao's father, Yang Jian, had offended the false emperor. It was good enough that Yang Tao could keep his life. They did not expect this fellow to play the pig to eat the tiger without saying a word. He launched a coup right under the false emperor's nose and turned from guest to host. The false emperor seemed to have magnanimously accepted Yang Tao's defection, but he had been secretly targeting him. He did not even allow Yang Tao to touch military power. Yang Tao was aware of the situation he was in. He secretly formed an alliance with the court officials who were not loyal to the false emperor. They planned carefully and looked for a good opportunity to strike. A month ago, the false emperor brought his court officials and children to worship the heavens. Under Yan Lin's suggestion, Yang Tao claimed to be sick half a month earlier. He secretly quickened his pace. The sacrificial ceremony was solemn and grand. Elegant music was melodious and sonorous. The false emperor was immersed in his own imagination. He never expected that Yang Tao, who he thought was completely useless, would show his sharp teeth at this moment. Under Yan Lin's orderly command, the coup was like a thunderstorm. Everyone was at a loss as to what to do. Yang Tao's 3,000 men of sacrifice became the decisive force in the coup. Yan Lin forged documents and military orders, mobilized troops from all sides, and controlled the armory and key departments. Before the false emperor, Prince Changshu, could react, they were already surrounded at the place where the sacrificial ceremony was held. By the time the false emperor wanted to mobilize troops to defend himself, it was already too late. A figure flashed across Qiguan Rang's mind. He said, it's obvious that this was a premeditated coup. The person who set it up was shrewd and ruthless. He was very good at playing with people's hearts. He was obviously at a disadvantage, but he was able to take advantage of every opportunity to attack the false emperor again and again. He made it impossible for the false emperor to calm down. Yang Tao was brave, but he lacked strategy. Even though he had grown a little after Yang Jian's death, he was still far from being as shrewd as the false emperor. In my opinion, all of this must have been done by an expert. I can't think of anyone else other than Yan Lin. Qiguan Rang's eyes flashed with coldness as he thought about this. He knew that Yan Lin was not a simple man, but he didn't expect him to be so capable. He had helped Yang Tao turn the tables from a disadvantageous position to an advantage. Now, he could control the entire Xianxia effortlessly. What a pity! If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have let Yan Lin live. Jiang Pingji said calmly, I also think that he was the one behind all of this. I have to say that he is indeed a meticulous and shrewd person. But he was able to help Yang Tao turn the tables. It was 50% strength and 50% luck. If it weren't for the fact that the Mengs in Cangzhou realized that they couldn't help the false emperor and withdrew their troops back to Cangzhou, Yan Lin wouldn't have been able to do this alone. This is fate. Qiguan Rang said, I'm afraid he will be a formidable opponent. What are you afraid of? Jiang Pingji said, one person's energy is limited. No matter how capable Yan Lin was, he wasn't a god. Jiang Pingji stayed in the north, but the forces in the south of Dongqing were constantly changing. Yang Tao turned the tables and took over Xianxia. Huang Song, who was in Haozhou, didn't want to be outdone either. He took over the entire Haozhou. The Su brothers in Zhe County fought amongst themselves for a while. It was hard to tell who would win. In the end, they all set their sights on their old neighbor, Hu County. The chief of Hu County was Wuma Shang, an old friend from the Huangshui meeting. Chapter 920. The mountains and rivers of his old country had been destroyed, and the people's lives were in dire straits. Chui thought that he could rely on his military strength to reclaim his old country, but he had greatly underestimated the situation within Nanxing. Nanxing, Jiangzhou. The barbarians of the four factions of Nanman only knew how to plunder and didn't know how to govern. Wherever they conquered, they would plunder and kill wantonly. He came empty-handed, but he left with a lot of money. Countless human heads and weeping women hung on the back of his horse. The heads were evidence of their military strength, and the women were spoils of war for them to vent their desires and show off their power. Chui wandered to Dongqing and only managed to gather 6,000 men after much scheming. He thought that he had some confidence, but the situation in Nanxing was far worse than when he left. The aristocratic families and commoners couldn't stand the violence of Nanman and rose up in revolt. If they focused on the outside world, Nanxing might still be saved, but the enemies had yet to retreat, and civil war had broken out. Chui brought 6,000 men and sufficient rations to support Jiangzhou of Nanxing. He was originally from Jiangzhou of Nanxing. This wasn't just his homeland, but also where Madame N had built her connections. If he developed in Jiangzhou, not only could he use Madame N's remaining connections, but he could also get help from his old friends. In the beginning, Chui's development was not bad. He used the teachings of the Red Lotus Group to recruit many militias and strengthen himself. But he quickly ran into a wall. Because of this, Chui lost more than half of his troops, and only 3,000 were left. Other than Chui, there were 2 other aristocratic families and a militia force in Jiangzhou. Chui chose to work with the aristocratic family that was on good terms with Madame N, but unexpectedly, they had ulterior motives. Although Chui was intelligent, he wasn't good at scheming. He was unknowingly tricked by the other party. Chui, Duishi. Chui meant worry. The elders had given Chui the nickname Duishi. It sounded tacky, but it was full of good wishes. They knew that this person was destined to have a difficult life. In his previous life, he had toiled for more than a decade, and in the end, he had risked everything to ask Wei Ci for help. He had taken over half of Nanxing. Now, he wasn't as down and out as he would be in the future, but he was still unlucky. Although he was from Nanxing, the troops he brought were all from Dongqing. In the eyes of the feudal lords in Nanxing, Chui was not on the right side. How could an outsider fight with them for power? If it wasn't a pretense, then it was the thought of using Chui to do his dirty work. He only treated Chui as a spear. At first, Chui did not realize this. When he ran into a wall and lost half of his troops, he suddenly realized. Chui had just passed the age of 30, so he could still withstand such a blow. However, his eyes couldn't help but turn red. However, after this setback, he also realized his shortcomings. He couldn't outcalculate others, and he didn't have a strategist by his side. His sworn brothers were also impulsive people. Such a combination could be easily manipulated by others, and the slightest provocation could ruin the whole thing. Chui thought for a moment. He planned to use his old friendship to invite a famous scholar to help him. However, Chui had no manpower, no land, and no money. Moreover, she had just suffered a defeat. Who would be willing to assist a lord like this? Even if Chui's status was illustrious, the entire N family had been wiped out by the barbarians, and Chui's wife and children had even been humiliated and killed by the barbarians. Was such a failed man worthy of the loyalty of others? Thus, every time Chui came to invite them, many famous people would either avoid meeting him or refuse him. Chui was not a thick-skinned person. He knew that others did not like his conditions, so he could only return resentfully. On one hand, he led his subordinates to seek refuge everywhere, and on the other, he looked for a chance to turn things around. Finally, he found his chance. I heard that Master Yuanjing's disciple is traveling nearby to study, and Chui's eyes burned. He remembered the performance of Master Yuanjing's first disciple, Qing Jing, during the Huangshui meeting. The fire in his heart burned even more. Traveling? What's going on here? Which idiot came here to study? My lord, did you hear wrongly? Although Dongqing was chaotic, it was not as chaotic as Nanxing. There were barbarians everywhere who wreaked havoc and plundered. A scholar traveling to a war-torn country to study was not traveling thousands of miles to read thousands of books. It was clearly rushing to find the king of hell to reincarnate. And Chui said, whether it's true or not, we should at least give it a try. The subordinates beside him were nervous. They really did not think highly of Chui's plan. Chui smiled. Master Yuanjing has a total of 4 disciples. His first disciple, Qing Jing, Qing Yumo, now works for Huang Song of Haozhou. His youngest disciple, Wei Si, Wei Zixiao, works for Lu Shi of Wanzhou. The remaining 2 are Han Yu, Han Wenbin, and Lu Jing, Lu Shaoyin. I heard that Han Yu has accepted the appointment of Su Bei, the eldest grandson of the Su family in Jie County of Dongqing. Then the remaining one, Lu Zheng? Never heard of him. Everyone shook their heads like a rattle drum. Lu Zheng was really not famous. Among Master Yuanjing's 4 disciples, Qing Jing and Han Yu were from the famous Langya family. Wei Si's status was slightly lower, and Lu Zheng was the son of a hunter. Chui had never heard of Lu Zheng's name, but he had tried to get close to Qing Jing during the Huangshui meeting. After asking around, he found out the names of Master Yuanjing's 4 disciples. I have a chance because I have never heard of him. Chui took a deep breath and said, I heard that Lu Zheng intends to visit the governor of Jiang Prefecture. The governor of Jiang Prefecture is my childhood friend. I know his temperament very well. He has a very strong sense of family background, but he does a good job on the surface. He won't look down on Lu Zheng in front of him, nor will he chase him away. For the sake of being wise, he will even put on a show and appoint Lu Zheng. But according to my understanding of the governor of Jiang Prefecture, he will never put the son of a hunter in an important position. Master Yuanjing's disciple must have something special about him, and his temperament must be more arrogant than ordinary people. In my opinion, Lu Zheng will definitely not be able to accept such cold treatment. In other words, Lu Zheng's setback gave Chui a chance to enter the governor's eyes. A few subordinates listened to Chui's words. They did not say anything on the surface, but they were secretly disapproving. In their opinion, there must be something wrong with a scholar who went to a war-torn country to study. However, his lord liked him and wanted to recruit him wholeheartedly. It turned out that Chui's guess was right. Unexpectedly, Lu Zheng also saw that the governor of Jiang Prefecture was not reliable. He rejected the governor's appointment and continued to study. Chui was anxious and immediately paid a visit with generous gifts. I won't see you. Lu Zheng wore a wide-sleeved cloak and a cloth scarf on his head. He was unadorned and looked like a poor scholar. The boy servant blinked and said, Sir, this is his 2nd time. I won't see him even if he comes 20 times, much less 2 times. Lu Zheng narrowed his eyes. He had grown a beard now. Although his face was still tender, he was far more mature than before. The boy servant raised his head and said, In ancient times, there were 3 attendants who came out of the mountains. Sir, you won't move even after 20 attendants? Study well and don't drop your bag. You'll make me feel awkward. The boy servant stuck out his tongue and followed Lu Zheng obediently. He did not dare to let Chui enter again. Why don't you like him, sir? The timing is not right. He still has the arrogance of a landowning household. That alone makes him unworthy of my consideration. Then when will it be enough? You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.